Pro football is king. That we all know. But which teams have the edge? Which players will shine this week? That's the information we're all trying to find out. And VSiN's got the answers for you. Now, on Inside the Numbers, get the very best information from VSiN's hosts and special guests on the biggest NFL games of the weekend. The best of VSiN, the Pro Football Edition, right now.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers. I'm Thomas Viola, and with only 3 weeks left in the NFL regular season, the action on the field and in the sportsbook is getting intense. Over the next 2 hours, our VSiN team will bring you everything you need to know to make your picks for this weekend's games. We kick things off today with a look at some of Sunday's best games with Mitch Moss and Paulie Howard on Follow the Money.
Here we go. Full slate of games coming up in the NFL this weekend. Let's begin with the Bengals hosting the Raiders. Again, the look-ahead line that we told you about a week ago was Cincinnati minus 4.5. That was before they played this past weekend, and the Raiders beat the Steelers at home. Now Cincinnati facing them at home. They're minus 3. Total is 46. Let me tell you why this should be a very good game for Joe Mixon, in theory, right? Charts' website, fanball.com. Mixon had a season-high 31 touches a week ago. He has topped 138 total yards in 2 of the last 3. Now, in Oakland's last 2 games, they held backups Spencer Ware and Jalen Samuels to very little on the ground after they allowed 225 yards to David Johnson and Gus Edwards and 165 to Melvin Gordon in their previous 3. And despite their decent play against those 2 fill-ins, the Raiders have given up the second most rushing yards to backs this entire season. I think the Bengals, you want to talk about burning it all down. If they don't make this, fantasy purposes as well, Joe Mixon should go nuts against the Raiders. But I also like Oakland to hang in there because they're not giving up.
Wow, these defenses here. Cincinnati's given up 30.5 points per game. They're last. Oakland's right behind them. Oakland, here's another, just like Pittsburgh, right? Oakland's 0-7 ATS after playing the Steelers. Cincinnati's 12-3 to the under versus an opponent off a Pittsburgh game. That's bonkos. So I give them credit. They both are hanging in there and fighting as the Raiders get the win. And Cincinnati hung in there and almost knocked off the Chargers as it came down to that 2-point conversion late. But I think there's going to be a ton of points scored in this game, even with Driscoll. And even at times, the Raider offense has played well.
Sure.
They look finally like an NFL, this dink and dunk stuff they were doing for so long. And Charlie checked down with Carr. So with the 2 worst defenses in the league, or near the bottom when you look at it in the numbers, I think it's going to be a ton of points. And Driscoll's not bad.
No, he's okay.
Kid's not bad.
Yeah, and I will say this too. The Raiders on social media, including Derek Carr, they're making a big push for Jared Cook to get into the Pro Bowl. Derek Carr was
he's been great.
He's been the MVP of our team. He said we got to get him into the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
So that's one angle to watch as well.
Here's my Zeke Elliott numbers earlier. So 5 in a row, straight up in ATS. Zeke, almost 1,300 yards rushing on the season, close to 5 yards per carry. 500 receiving yards, 65 receptions.
Oh.
It's like, what were you doing? He's been the touches the last 5 games. Finally, right? And the defense certainly awesome as well. But that's a great game. But I'm with Matt. I like the Colts because of the spot. They need it. Colts, Dallas already has a division essentially wrapped up, and the overtime angle, which I mentioned earlier, as the Colts are 7-0 ATS versus an opponent off an overtime game. And I like them at home. You were right. You nailed it. Luck has been fantastic to go in and beat Houston and the long win and the nice run they have, 7 of 8, 6 of 7, whatever. I don't know how they lost against Jacksonville. That was a strange result. And if they do it, they did to themselves, especially Franklin.
Yep.
But it looks like it'll come down. That'll be your flex game, Week 17, because Indy goes to Tennessee. That'll likely decide the final wild card.
Okay. This game, by the way, Buffalo, they're hosting Detroit. Buffalo is 2 at a lot of shops, 2.5 at some others. This, I don't know how Matthew Stafford has good numbers in this game, unless Buffalo gets out really big early, then they go to prevent defense. Let me give you your favorite quarterback's numbers since November 4th against Minnesota. In that game, he threw for 199 yards and no touchdowns. Against Chicago in the loss, remember this was typical Matthew Stafford, right? Down huge, then came back to make it interesting where he put up good numbers, 274, 2 touchdowns, and 2 INTs. After that, against Carolina, 220 and 1 touchdown. In the loss against Chicago, 236, no scores. Against the Rams, 245, 1 score. And last week against Arizona, Paul, he threw for 101 yards and no touchdowns. Buffalo's defense is really good.
Oh, yeah. They're at the top in the mainstream stats with passing defense. Lions, 8-1-1 ATS run against teams with a losing record. There he is.
And maybe that's why he'll
Beats
actually
the bad
be
teams.
good. Sure.
Uh-huh. It's also, I like the Allen prop over with the rushing yards, and I don't see where points are coming from in this game either. And you got to get, Buffalo blew that game last week. Blew a double-digit lead.
Yeah, totally blew it.
And getting beat. So another road game for Detroit, too.
Okay.
Concerned about the travel. You go Arizona, now you're going to Buffalo.
What do you make of the matchup here? Tampa Bay playing Baltimore. It's an early game. The Ravens, 7.5. Seen some 8s as well. Total 46.5, maybe a 47 out there as well. This, to me, again, Lamar Jackson, by the way, going to start, right? Joe Flacco listed as a backup. So evidently, he is healthy. The writing is on the wall. He is going to be probably somewhere else next year. This is going to be Lamar Jackson's team, although I loved what he said yesterday. Not my team. It's our team. We're one big team. I don't make tackles out there. I don't go and block. Very good for a rookie to say that. Their defense, again, is one of the best in football. And the Buccaneers and whomever has played quarterback, Winston or Fitzgerald, it's been a turnover machine, a turnover factory this year. I know the Buccaneers have been feisty. That block punt completely changed the dynamic of the game against the Saints last week when they were up by double digits. Could have won that game, yet they didn't even cover.
Yeah, it's 14-3 with 7 minutes left in the third quarter.
Yep.
And then they didn't score. They were shut out in the second half, and they lost by 14. Baltimore, 18 points per game they're allowing, number 1 in the league. Tampa Bay's near the bottom. This is the game, I think you said earlier in the week, this is the game where not only will Baltimore take it away, they might get a defensive touchdown.
I think so, too. Yeah, this is, by the way, I would say this going back to Jackson and Flacco, this is more of a Joe Flacco game than Lamar Jackson, right? Because it's run with Jackson as a quarterback. Well, you can pass all over Tampa Bay secondary. And I guess if Lamar can't throw it this weekend, when's he ever going to throw it?
Yep.
Because teams are burning that team through the air.
Baltimore takes it away, and they can score. The Niner thing. The 49ers, they have 5 takeaways on the season. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. How's that possible?
It should not be.
No turnovers in the last 5 games. Going into last week, they were on pace to have the fewest amount of takeaways since like the 50s. But the run that they're on, Seattle 9 in a row against the Niners, beat them up 2 weeks ago, and a 9-1 underrun at home for San Francisco against when the opponent's on a winning streak of 3 or more. So that's in play too. But I don't agree with the move. I think Seattle beats them. I'll quickly run down the scenarios. Seattle win and in. They clinch the 5 seed with a win and a Minnesota loss. Bears can wrap up the division. They also clinch a playoff spot with a win and a Redskin loss. Rams clinch a bye with a win and a Chicago loss. Saints clinch a bye with a win and a Chicago loss. Patriots clinch the East with a win and a Miami loss. Texans clinch the South with a win, and Tennessee and Indy losses with some of your scenarios coming up.
Do you want to lay this big of a number with Atlanta at home against Arizona?
No, I don't. They went to Lambeau. They looked pathetic last week, but they did go to Lambeau 2 weeks ago and won. I guess it was more that Green Bay was in disarray. But what's Atlanta? And to me, I'd shut everyone down.
So would I.
And try to get it. Because you're right, you're in the mix. You're Atlanta. You're in the mix for the first overall pick. You're 4-9. But as bad as that offense has been during this losing streak, they haven't scored more than 20 points during the 5-game losing streak.
That is unacceptable.
It absolutely is.
In today's NFL, with the weapons that they have to work with, I don't know how Sark is back, and you can bet that globally, where, again, we talked about that a little bit earlier in today's show. He's got to be gone, right? Has to be.
Even money. The Julio thing, can Peterson slow? He's ripped up Peterson a couple times. But if Peterson can contain Julio, then what happens? Because they can't run it either.
Sure. Let me give you this. Let me give you this overall matchup here, the breakdown. They actually matched up 3 times in college. They went back-to-back in the 2011 draft, and they've played 3 times so far in the pros. Jones went nuts. He had 185 yards and a touchdown in 2014, but Peterson actually held him in check, a combined 7 catches for 68 yards in the other two clashes that they played. So one time Jones went crazy, the other 2 times Peterson pretty good against him. And if he plays well against him on Sunday, shuts him down, you're exactly right. Is it going to be a Ridley game where he goes crazy? Hooper can't run the football that well?
How bad do you have to be that Minnesota has better rushing stats than you do? Atlanta's worst in the league. And Minnesota throws it. I read this yesterday. Minnesota throws it 67% of the time.
Well, I mean, it feels.
What are you doing?
I know. It feels like they throw at least, when you watch the games, the numbers don't lie, right? It feels like they throw it on every single down.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot get what they did against the Patriots when Cook had 9 carries for 84 yards, and they were in that game in the second half. And it was just, nope, sorry, we're not going to run. We got to get cute and throw it every single down.
In Arizona, too, if you want to go to war with it, 13 points per game on the season. Oh, God. Baltimore, 6-1 to the under. I forgot this. 6-1 to the under at home with a total of 45 or more. So that's in play against Tampa. I could see them moving the ball and running all over them, too. They're right there. It's huge for them.
Yep.
Guys, they could win the division, get in the playoffs, set up that big game Saturday night against the Chargers on the road.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do with the Sunday night game, Rams against the Eagles. And right now we are seeing L.A. favored by 11 in this game. I'm going to fill out one of these reverse teasers today. The pleaser cards, where 11 or 12 games came in last week, 7 pays 2,000-1. I'm taking a shot this week.
Gets ugly. I could see it.
I'm going to lay Rams minus 17.5.
They know it's over.
On the pleaser. Oh, yeah.
Heartbreak. I know they were thoroughly outplayed, but still heartbreaking loss. You get beat in overtime. You're the Super Bowl champs. You're going to miss the playoffs. Now to the point you're going to need help, and you're going to have to win and get help. And now it's how bad was Foles in the preseason and then early on? I mean, terrible.
Remember the Tampa Bay game?
The first quarter games, the issues they had in the first preseason carried over the regular season. Now you don't have Wentz. I don't see how they're going to move the ball.
Oh, remember yesterday when we had Charchin on, he actually made the case that this is going to be Todd Gurley going crazy against this defense. He thinks it sets up beautifully for Gurley to run the ball all over them. And we're talking about arguably the worst secondary in football.
Yeah.
I'm going to forget what Goff did against the Bears on the road, cold weather against a really good defense. He looked bad, but that doesn't even mean anything to me in this game. Goff could have one of those games where he is truly 25 of 30 for 312 yards and 4 touchdowns. They should kill this team on Sunday night.
Yep, Philly's had issues running it too on offense. You go one-dimensional and you got to put pressure on Foles. You fall behind early. Yeah. Could get out of hand. Co-sign on that one.
Do you think Jacksonville, Washington gets out of hand?
I don't think with Johnson. It's hard because I think he's better than what to say about Sanchez.
Yeah, right.
I trust him more than Sanchez, but you move the ball and it's garbage time. I mean, it's 40-0 when they had the 2 touchdowns late. But Jacksonville's lost 9 of 10. How are you going to lay 7.5 with a team that's lost 9 of 10?
Well, and by the way, eyeball test here, right? 2 weeks ago when the defense wanted to play, they shut out Andrew Luck and the Colts, right? 6-0 was that final. And then fast forward to a Thursday night game where they gave up a 99-yard run and 200-plus to Derrick Henry, who killed them. And they completely quit in that game.
This is great for in-play wagering. The Redskins have lost every game when they fall behind. When the opponent scores first and they trail, they've lost every game. And the Redskins have lost 16 in a row when trailing at the half. Doesn't say much about Gruden. 16 in a row they've lost when trailing at half.
Horrible.
That's a good halftime bet, and that's good for wagering. And this is the biggest indictment for Blake Bortles. Jacksonville's on a 2-13 run when they allow 20 points. I mean, that's it. That's it. That's all you need to know. Even if you give up 21, it's like, we're screwed. 2-13 run when they give up at least 20 points. I don't know if Johnson's going to do that, but maybe they blow him out. But you can't lay that on a team that's lost 9 of 10. He's like, well, they got embarrassed on. All right.
Isn't that weird about the NFL, where a guy like Blake Bortles, if you go back to the game against the Patriots, he legitimately looked like borderline fantastic. He was awesome in that game, and the play calling was terrific, and the game plan was overall was like a masterpiece, right? What they should have done a year ago in the AFC title game. And that is just like a 1-game sample size, and the rest of, and he's had other decent games, but for the most part, the guy's just a total train wreck.
Yep.
Yahoo Sports writer Frank Schwab joined The Edge to give his favorite picks of the week after this on Inside the Numbers.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
Actually, it can be a little bit more difficult to handicap the bowl games. And one of the reasons is that a lot of these teams playing each other don't really have much history playing each other. I mean, you might have 2 schools that have been around 100 years, and they only have 3 games historically. And the last time they played, they had completely different coaches, obviously none of the same players. So it can be a little more difficult. Plus, they don't share as many common opponents as you would have for 2 teams within the same conference playing each other any given week.
Bowl season, different animal than the regular season for 3 big reasons. time off, motivation, and coaching changes. Normally a college team plays once a week. Bowl season, they've been off for several weeks. Sometimes they've been off even a month. What's happened in that time? Some of these teams have coaching changes. You're dealing with new coaches, interim coaches, outgoing coaches. Completely different team, completely different culture than you've dealt with all season long. Finally, the matter of motivation. They've been gone for several weeks. Who's prepared? Who's unprepared? Who's rusty? Who doesn't want to be there? Who's motivated? Who's discouraged? Factor these in, it is much different, much harder to handicap than the regular season.
I think when it looks at bowl season and how difficult it may be to set lines, a lot's on matchups and who the teams are. Sometimes a team is really excited to be in a bowl game, and maybe a team that didn't play well during the season, they're not so excited. So we look at that all the time. There's certain coaches that have 2 and 3 weeks to prepare that we look at. There's a lot of factors that go into it. I don't think it's really hard, but I think we just have to really look at all those factors. We're in an information era, and there's plenty of that out there.
College football bowl games really aren't that hard to, really in a sense, put a number to, only because you have so much time from when the season ends to actually when the game is. Now, naturally, between that time, you're obviously a little careful of understanding what can happen with the schoolwork. Why would I say that, Jimmy? There's been a lot of kids with their midterms who don't pass the test, then are ineligible for the bowl game. It's happened quite a few times. It's something you really look forward to. But on the other hand, it's really not as hard as people make it out to be, only because of the time lapse from end of season to the bowl game itself.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
The NFL announced this week that the draft is coming to Las Vegas in 2020, and Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports is already excited.
It is official that Las Vegas will get the NFL draft in the year 2020. Right around the corner. A question for you, what do you make of the news, and have you gotten involved at all in the last few years in NFL draft betting?
No, I haven't, but I've seen it, obviously. I think it's great from so many levels. The NFL can't act, I just wrote this, the NFL can't act like Las Vegas is some satellite market where, okay, they got the public money for the stadium, but we're never going to give them any marquee events because we don't agree with gambling. I think you got to be all in, and I think it kind of, I don't want to say it disturbed me or it was troubling that they didn't give Las Vegas a Super Bowl right away. But I was curious, is this going to be a real NFL city, or is it just going to be, I guess we got to move a team there because they gave us $750 million in tax money. And by putting a draft there, which is their marquee off-season event, clearly, I think that's a great sign for Vegas, for the market. It's a great sign that the NFL's warming up to the idea of Vegas. I don't know if we'll ever get to a place where the NFL, at least, not under this regime, maybe when some younger owners come in or whatever. I don't know if we'll get to a place where the NFL embraces gambling, but maybe it won't act like it's the devil anymore. I mean, I remember this, one of the most memorable stories I've written since I've joined Yahoo was 3-4 years ago. You guys probably remember this, when Tony Romo was going to have a fantasy football event at the Venetian, at the Sands Convention Center there. And the NFL nixed it because it was connected to a casino. That's only like 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to today, when its marquee off-season event is going to Vegas. It's just an unbelievable 180. I'm happy for it. I'm glad. It's long overdue that the NFL and Las Vegas kind of joined forces to some extent.
Yeah, and there was a report today. NFL officials actually told the owners this week at the league meetings that the league will begin the process of securing a national casino sponsor, similar to what the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball have done with MGM Resorts. So obviously the NFL's headed in that direction, full steam ahead, Frank, like you said, all in, right?
Yeah, it's shockingly the NFL's behind everybody else. They're not. Shockingly, they're waiting for the more progressive leagues to take hold with that. But yeah, look, fans want this. I don't know many fans anywhere who maybe they're not gamblers. maybe they don't put $20 on a parlay or something like that, but nobody's really against it. You know what I mean? Maybe even if you're not for it, you're not, shaking your fist and saying gambling is the ruination of the NFL. No, nobody really thinks that way anymore. So it's long overdue that we get this. But I got questions for you guys. How excited is Vegas? How's the draft going to look in 2020? Is the stadium going to be up and running? Is this a T-Mobile Arena event? What do you guys think about this?
I got to think it's going to be a T-Mobile Arena event. Humans brought that up first, and I would think it's a fantastic venue, whether it's Toshiba Plaza or actually in the arena itself. I think it sets up better for an event like that.
Yeah, you would think so. T-Mobile's got that's a perfect venue for something like that. Right on the Strip.
Yep.
Do the draft on the Strip, and also the football stadium might not be ready at that point. Obviously,
yeah, I was wondering. I didn't know. I hadn't thought about whether it would be available in April because we didn't need it in April until today's announcement. Now all of a sudden, that the construction date becomes a question. But what a great! As a guy who loves Vegas, we all do. Everybody listening does. What great news! This is really fun, and now I hope that the next step is, hey, let's give Vegas a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's going to happen at some point. Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports at Yahoo Schwab. All right, let's talk about some of the big games on this week's card because it's a great card, Frank. And we'll start with the news this morning that Carson Wentz is not going to play for the Eagles, and the number is up to 10.5, 11 with the Rams. And you would think that this is going to be a spot where the Rams want to get well off that Sunday night, just a pitiful performance offensively against the Bears. What's your take on the Eagles without Carson Wentz and the Rams in a bounce-back spot here where they have to win and keep pace with the Saints in that race for home field advantage?
Yeah, and you look at the situation for the Eagles, too, even with Wentz, if it was with Wentz, and it's not, it doesn't look like anyway. Last week was their playoffs. We all kind of knew, hey, the Eagles got any shot, they got to beat the Cowboys. And to lose that game in overtime and basically have your season end on that. And now you got to go to the West Coast and play a really, really good team that, like you said, is going to be looking for a rebound. I think situationally it is a really terrible spot. I don't. It's hard to talk yourself into the Eagles, I guess, and even with that many points. But I guess the only thing I'd say is maybe the line overreacts a little bit to Wentz versus Foles. Foles is capable. He's also capable of being utterly terrible. He's the most streakiest quarterback I've ever seen. But he's also capable of playing well. So maybe the line overreacts a little bit to Wentz versus Foles. Wentz hasn't been great this year. So maybe that's how you talk yourself in the Eagles. Other than that, though, situationally, it's one of those extremes where you just say, I can't imagine the Eagles are motivated enough to really put forth their best effort this Sunday night.
Frank, I wanted to ask you about Miami and Minnesota. So it's not the best matchup, but we get Filippo is fired now for Minnesota. But I'm just curious because it's a touchdown spread. Minnesota's a 7-point favorite. It's a little bit of a letdown spot for Miami coming off of that big win against the Patriots. But I just see Minnesota laying 7 points, and I don't want any part of that. Am I overreacting to watching them just throw up a terrible performance on Monday night, and they're actually going to see something now that DeFilippo's out of there?
No, I think that's the way you got to look at it. What has Minnesota done all season to justify a 7-point spread against anybody, really, unless it's like Arizona or somebody or Oakland? The Vikings aren't a very good football team. Now, they have handled bad teams generally this season, but I don't know that. I guess I don't know where I stand on Miami. I don't think they're not good. We know that, but I don't know if they're necessarily bad either. I just give the faith to the Dolphins here. I know I was listening to Gil on Monday and on VSiN, and he was talking about how this was like the Colts game to him, and how the Dolphins were just laying too many points. What have the Colts done to be I think it was 9 8-point favorites against the Dolphins. The Dolphins covered that game. I think they can cover this one too. The Vikings. We don't. It's hard to handicap coaching changes because you can there's different ways. Sometimes look at the Packers last week. The Packers reacted well. Joe Philbin's not a great coach, but I think sometimes it lights a fire. Sometimes you say, oh my goodness, if they just fired John DeFilippo in the middle of the season when we're still the 6th seed in the NFC, I might be next. I need to play a little bit better. But also, it can really mess with you. You're talking about an offensive coordinator change with 3 weeks to go in the season. I don't know how to handicap that. I just know that 7 points is too many to lay with the Vikings right now. They're just not a very good football team.
Do you think that was the right move? Because I've heard a lot of, this falls really on Kirk Cousins a lot. And I was like, yeah, well, he had a terrible performance on Monday night, but they haven't been able to run the ball all year long. And you look at some of the plays that they rolled out there, like on 4th and short, where you bring Adam Thielen in an inch away from the offensive line, and you wonder, hey, what are they doing here? Like, it's a lot of people's issues, like, with that offense and what's been going on, but I don't think a lot falls on Kirk Cousins, right?
Yes. Go ahead. Just with DiFilippo really quick. He's one of those guys, a lot of NFL analysts, for whatever reason, fell in love with him.
Yeah.
And it's like Sashi Brown. He's just one of those guys that people go to the end of the earth to defend when maybe we were just wrong about this guy. He's been an offensive coordinator 2 times, and he's failed both times. Once was with the Browns and Johnny Manziel. I get it. Like, that's not being dealt a very good hand. But what has led me to believe John DiFilippo is really that much of a brilliant offensive play caller? Some of the stuff the Vikings did this year is just weird. It's really a bad conservative offense. Now, is that Kirk Cousins taking it upon himself to check it down all the time? I don't know, but I don't think Kirk Cousins, like you mentioned, is the guy who's calling these extreme tight formations on 4th and 1. They did that against the Bears, too. It's dumb. It's bad. It's bad football. So I wonder if it's one of those things where DiFilippo has just got this kind of this status as this offensive genius play caller. I don't know. I look at the Eagles last year, I think maybe Frank Reich was the guy. Maybe Frank Reich was the reason they were so good. So I don't think the firing was unjustified. Let's put it that way. And as far as it goes with Cousins, he hasn't been bad, but they didn't pay him to beat up on the Jets and the Cardinals. They paid him $84 million to beat the Bears or the Patriots or the Saints or the Seahawks, and he has disappeared and he shrunk in big games. That's always kind of been a knock on him too. So
sounds familiar.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. Yeah, right. Like I was a Kirk Cousins supporter. I thought it was a smart move for the Vikings, and if you've seen Case Keenum play with Denver this year, it's tough to argue. Yeah. But he's got to play better in big games, just flat out.
Cousins did not play well against the Bears at Soldier Field. How about Aaron Rodgers this week? The Packers won 8 straight. They are 8 straight at Soldier Field, but they're 0-6 on the road this season. They are 15-3 against the Bears in the past 18. Any reason to get behind Aaron Rodgers this week as a 6-point underdog to a Bears defense that just held the Rams to 6 points?
Right, and usually you might think, hey, there's a letdown coming, a big primetime game against the Rams, and you just blast them off the field. I don't think that happened. Look, I grew up in Wisconsin. I know what the Packers-Bears rivalry is. I know that they remember Week 1 when they had the Packers on the ropes and they let them off the hook, the famous Aaron Rodgers comeback from the knee injury game. I like what I saw from the Packers last week. It's the best they've played all season. But also, I think that those emotional lifts you get are usually for one game. We see that when a backup quarterback has to play and a team rallies for one game. We saw when, maybe they rallied around Joe Philbin or, hey, just a shock to the system of losing your coach, but that doesn't usually go on for weeks and weeks. I don't think there's a great spot for the Packers by any means. Now, the back door is always going to be open with Aaron Rodgers, but yeah, I don't see any real reason to rush and take the Packers here because the Bears are going to be fired up. They want to get there, they want to make up for what happened in Week 1. They know this rivalry. It's going to be a tough spot for Green Bay, who, other than last week, has been a mediocre team all season.
All right, this is showdown week in the AFC. You got the Chargers-Chiefs. You also have the Patriots-Steelers, and there's a lineup in Vegas on that now. It's Patriots -2. That's where it's settled in. Looks like Big Ben is going to play. And, Frank, I mentioned this angle and this trend actually during the show today. The Patriots are 20-0 against the spread off a straight-up loss when they are a dog or a small favorite, meaning -3 or less. And the Patriots here -2. What do you expect to see?
Hard to deny that, but I will say, is this Patriots team as good as we think? Because I think one thing that I look at across sports, especially really in college basketball is a big deal with this. How good are you on the road? Everybody should win at home, but how good are you on the road? Well, Patriots are 3-4 on the road. They've lost by double digits to the Lions, Jaguars, and Titans, and they just lost to the mediocre Dolphins. Now, yeah, that was a fluky and whatever, but you shouldn't be messing around with the Dolphins and allow them to even steal one from you like that. So I'm looking at a team that's 3-4 on the road, and they're going to face a Pittsburgh team that all of a sudden is very desperate. I don't think many people have really grasp this, but the Pittsburgh Steelers are in serious danger of missing the playoffs. I'm not talking about winning the AFC North. I'm talking about getting kicked out of the playoffs. If they go 1-2 in their next two, and they got the Patriots on Sunday and at the Saints after that, well, then you're looking at if the Ravens win 2 of their last 3, and any one of those 7-6 teams wins 2 of their last 3, whether it's the Colts or Titans or whoever, Steelers are out of the playoffs. And so it's a desperate spot for them. I think it's almost a playoff spot for them. They understand what's left under schedule and all that kind of stuff. So I'm leaning Steelers just because I think this is a better spot for them. And the Patriots, they're just not a very good road team. I think one thing, and we've talked about I've struggled in Super Contest here this year, one thing I haven't looked at enough is just these extreme home road splits with a lot of these teams. There are a lot of teams in the NFL who are just bad on the road. They're just a different team on the road. And the Patriots are one of those teams. We don't think of them that way, but they have been this year. And so I don't know that I necessarily trust them at Pittsburgh.
Up next, Matt Youmans and Sam Panayotovich give their takes on Sunday's matchups.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
But the other thing is, and you were talking about it before we went on, Raiders plus 550 on the money line. Exactly. You want to go ahead and put a little on the side, just aside from taking the points.
Right.
That's very, very tempting.
Now, listen, obviously everybody knows I'm a little bit biased, but I have not pushed anybody in that direction all year. No, did I intend to, but I said, wait a minute, that's an inflated number without James Conner. That's one that's going to get corrected as the week moves on. And the Raiders were impressive last week. I have to tell you, the Chiefs, we know, are a Super Bowl contender, but they were good, and they didn't yield until the fourth quarter.
Where they at on the Warriors now? They moved that because they get a lot of Warriors. They're 170 now. The yes/no. Think about that. File that one away. December 4th. Talk to me in May. December 4th. The Warriors are available minus 170 to win the title. Okay. Cousins is coming back. Schedule's getting easy.
Where do you think it goes?
They have
$3?
Oh, they're going to rip off a long win. They're going to rip off like it feels like 15-1 coming here.
When you hear about how wonderful these coaches are, they just say it. They win. They don't show what they do on a basketball court that's so wonderful. Do you ever see them diagram a Coach K play or show something terrific he did on defense that changed the game? The answer is no, because that won't happen. He's not a very good coach. He's a good CEO. That's the way someone described me once. And, I think that's like perfect.
I'm not a big fan of handicapping or betting AFC South games. I think it's kind of like a hound's breakfast. Just a bunch of crap thrown into a bowl, and you don't know what you're going to get from one week to the next.
That's right.
Huh?
It's a tough division. Yeah. They play each other very close almost every single time.
And then and then the Titans, the Texans have won 9 in a row. But I mean, we've talked about it over and over how lucky they've been during this 9-game win streak. You have to give them credit for winning the close games.
Yep.
But it's not like the Titans are a dominant team.
Yeah, and
Texan.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
Matt Youmans and Sam Panayotovich try to give you the edge every week to beat the books with their thoughts on Sunday's games.
Miami and Minnesota will go to the Sunday slate here December 16th. This number looks awfully big, but Vegas knows what they're doing here. I have a feeling this is going to be a tough day for the Dolphins. The Dolphins have been crushed multiple times this year on the road. Yeah, at home, they're really good.
Yeah.
They take care of business at home. Here are their road games. 38-7 loss, 27-17 loss, 42-23 loss, 31-12 loss. There's a pattern here.
Yeah.
When they leave South Beach, they get murdered.
You know what? I got a tweet yesterday from a listener of the show, and I want to give him credit. Someone will look it up quickly. But the week after the Dolphins-Patriots game is a horrible time to actually play the Dolphins. And I'll get you the number on this, but we were talking about this a little bit on yesterday's show. I think the Vikings on a teaser here would be a great play this week. Knock them down to 1. I feel really confident the Vikings are going to win the game. Not crazy about laying the 7, but I do think you're going to get a team that's refocused after Monday night's embarrassment and the offensive coordinator getting fired. Usually that's a good spot to back a team. Here it is from Gary Ivins on Twitter, says Miami Dolphins 0-7 on the road the week after playing the Pats. And after a miracle win like that, which I like to call a rabbit out of the hat spot, because you get a team off a miracle win, you don't want to back that team the next week. There's going to be some sort of letdown, and I think that's going to be the case with the Dolphins.
Dolphins are 6-1 ATS at home. On the road, 1-5 ATS.
Yep.
They cover at home, they don't on the road. Oakland, Cincinnati, 309-310. Hooks are pretty much gone across town. This was 3.5, and there was some position on the Oakland Raiders. They took the 3.5 down to Bengals -3. This total hasn't really moved either. 46 pretty much everywhere. Can't wait for this one. Bengals and Raiders. Woohoo.
A lot of disrespect in the betting market here for the Cincinnati Bengals to essentially in a pick'em spot on a neutral with the Raiders.
Yeah, we'll give you 3 for home field. There you go.
You get 3 in Cincy. If you look at the Bengals injury report and the guys on IR, this team is just going to mail it in. I mean, is this going to be, the 10th consecutive year we say this is it for Marvin Lewis?
He needs more time.
Is he going to last?
He needs more time. Just another year.
One thing about the Raiders we can say is that they have played hard. I really thought they were going to pack it in, and that's not been the case here in the past month under John Gruden. They've actually, we heard there was a lot of discontent in the locker room, veteran players bitching about the atmosphere around the Raiders team, and then what do? They've come out and they've covered and played well the past few weeks, so that's been a little bit of a surprise to me. Do we have the call of Brent Musburger and Lincoln Kennedy yesterday? From Sunday. We played this on the show.
You just threw Jorge through a fit. He's like, oh, my God, where is he? He's trying to find it now.
I love this. This shows you that the Raiders have not packed it in and quit on the season.
This will be a 40-yarder. He's missed a 37-yarder earlier today. Snap, hold, he slips. The Raiders win it. The Raiders win it. Can you believe it?
Oh, my.
The Raiders are a winner. Let the celebration begin, baby.
Brett, I've never seen anything like this. What an exciting game.
The announcers, how fired up is the announcing crew over the third win of the season?
I've never seen anything like this.
Never seen anything like this. Oh, my.
He missed the field goal.
So even the announcing crew's fired up in this team. This team has not quit. The announcers have not quit on the season.
Remember Gruden?
Third win.
Holding up 3.
Now we have the third draft pick.
Running into the black hole.
Slipping to number 3 in the draft.
It's outstanding.
Their third win.
I might make that call my ringtone.
How about if the Raiders win this week? Win number 4. They're going to continue to slide down that draft order. Yeah.
All right. Tampa Bay, Baltimore. I took 8 with the Buccaneers. I took this in Point Spread Weekly. If there's one thing the Bucs can do, it's score. You can't stop anybody, and the Buck games have gone over at a pretty nice little clip. 8-5 to the over. Your point spread here, it was 8, and the 8s are starting to disappear here. So the Ravens now laying 7.5. My adage is, with a good defense, I'll always take points. With a bad quarterback, I never want to lay them. I'm not laying points with Trubisky, and I don't want to lay 7.5 with Lamar Jackson.
Nah, it's tough to lay more than a touchdown with Lamar Jackson. Even though the Ravens' top-scoring defense in the NFL, and they gave up a lot of yards to KC last week, I thought they had a really good game plan, and I thought their defense was solid against KC. It took a couple of really miracle throws by Mahomes for the Chiefs to win that game. One miracle throw and then a clutch fourth down throw later to help force overtime for the Chiefs to escape with a win in that game. It's like you said, though, it's just tough to lay anything more than 7. It's tough to lay points, period, with Lamar Jackson. And Tampa Bay has been number 1 in total offense in the NFL for a long time. The problem for the Bucs is they don't translate yards into points.
Or red zone.
Right. They don't
red zone stays into touchdowns. Yeah, a lot of times they turn 6 into 3, if you know what I mean. Dallas, Indianapolis, and I was on in Austin this morning, and they were sort of agreeing with me on the letdown here for the Cowboys, because if you look back, I mean, they're hot right now. They've won 5 in a row. They've covered a good chunk of those games, but in all reality, they have the division in their grasp, right? I mean, they have a 3-game lead. It's only a 2-game lead, but they have the tiebreaker on the Eagles, so they need to lose out and the Eagles need to win every game. Dallas is sitting pretty here. The guys in Austin were kind of thinking the same thing. They think this is a bad spot for the Cowboys after a really important win. Now you go on the road for the first time in a month, and the line already moving against them, too. Opened up 2.5. Now the Colts -3.
Yeah, I've said this a couple times this week. I love the Colts in this spot because they got to be playing with a sense of urgency here. You know, they got a shot to make the playoffs in the AFC, a real shot. This team started 1-5. It is 6-1 in the past 7 games. And if you draw a line through that Jacksonville game, Andrew Luck and the Colts have been one of the hottest teams in the NFL. And I really thought they were going to beat the Texans on the road. I'm glad they delivered in that spot. But the Cowboys have to be a little bit fat and happy with the way things have gone. You're talking about a Dallas team that was down and out after that Monday. Remember that Monday night loss to the Titans? And you had Troy Aikman on Dallas radio saying the Cowboys need an organizational overhaul. And everything was going south for Dallas. Since that point, 5 straight wins and covers for the Cowboys. I think the team hits the wall this week. It is a letdown spot because they have the tiebreaker over the Eagles, essentially have a 3-game lead in the division. And, you know, we saw Zach Martin limp off the field. Offensive line's a little bit banged up. You know, Dallas did roll up 576 yards against that Philly defense. But I think that was a little bit deceiving. If you go back and look at the Cowboys' other offensive outputs in the past 10 weeks, nothing close to that. So probably a little recency bias here for people who want to bet the Cowboys. I think this game means a lot more to the Colts, and I like the Colts, and you can lay 2.5, I think, out there at some spots. Yesterday there was a brief time where the South Point had 2.5 up on this game, and Station Casinos in Vegas right now has 2.5 -120. I like the Colts a lot at that price.
I was looking at the divisional odds here just to see how big these numbers are.
Right.
At William Hill, the Cowboys are 1-250. 1-250 to win the division.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know here. This division's over. It's over. I mean, the Cowboys have it.
Right.
They're not losing out, and the Eagles aren't winning.
I mean,
out.
on top of that, you look at the other teams in the division. The Cowboys are in the driver's seat. And you don't have a lot of faith in Jason Garrett, and you think maybe he can screw it up. Not even he can screw this up, okay?
Eagles are 30-1. Redskins are 50-1 to win the division.
Eagles are double-digit dogs at L.A. against the Rams. The Eagles are not winning this week. The Redskins are down to their 4th quarterback,
Josh Johnson.
And the Giants are not catching the Cowboys. So
Giants are 100.
Dallas has won the division.
Giants 100-1 to win the division. Last game, we got time for one more here. And this is probably the most polarizing game. 317, 318. I hear a lot of people on both ends of this game. Green Bay, Chicago. You got the Bears, who on Sunday night held the Rams to 6. They win that game very, very dominantly, 15-6 in the cold. They go from being a 3-point dog to a 6-point favorite against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I remind you, Rodgers all-time against the Chicago Bears, 16-4 as a starter. In one of those games, he broke his collarbone. Right. Shea McClellan broke his collarbone. So that's what you have. I get it that the Packers aren't as good as they once were, but I've seen this movie multiple times. The Bears, overrated, overinflated. The Packers, nothing to lose. Aaron Rodgers is going to come out. He's going to play this game really, really well.
Packers are 15-3 in the past 18 against the Bears. They've won 8 straight, right, at Soldier Field?
Yes, sir. And they've been bad on the road this year, but this is a different game, a different monster.
0-6 on the road. Aaron Rodgers knows he can beat this opponent. I'm not sure what to do with this game, but I will say if the public is all over the Bears and this line goes up by Sunday, I'll probably take the points with the Packers.
I wonder if it gets to 7. I really do. I think it's tough to imagine that at 7.
It's possible that the public would be all over the Bears to the point that it could reach 7.
Well, they're on the Bears every week.
I'm not going to say it's...
They're on the Bears every week. The Bears are 9-4 against the spread. And the Bears just held the Rams to 6 points on Sunday night. So if you don't think the public's going to be on the Bears in this spot, I got news for you. They are. I mean, it already went from 5 to 5.5 to 6.
Right.
Might get to 7.
I think it could get to 7. I'm not going to rule it out. You know, we talked about this on the opening line show. I think it was Dave Tooley who said, you know, at 7, I'll take the Pack. And at that point, I wasn't sure it was going to get to 7. Right now, I wouldn't be surprised. If you go out and poll 20 people in the sports book today about the Bears-Packers game, you'll be lucky if you get more than 2 out of 20 who say they like the Pack, right?
I'd agree with that. Yeah, Bears are a very public side here, and Aaron Rodgers again against the Bears all time, 16-4 as a starter.
Coming up on Inside the Numbers, Warren Sharp has something to say about the NFL's recent refereeing issues.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
You know where we got our ass kicked, Brent? Is the first season with the USFL, because we didn't have a clue.
Right.
But we had to throw numbers up there because you had to do something with the strike and USFL and all the rest of the stuff. We lowered the limits, but if we broke even for the week, everybody was satisfied. The Smarts had it way, way ahead of us as far as that was concerned way back when.
They had some great players in there. Steve Young, Jim Kelly, Herschel Walker.
Yeah, sure.
Wow, we have some humongous breaking news this morning. Humongous.
Redskins claimed Hunt?
This is as big as it gets.
Oh, no.
Yep.
How do you have it? There's nothing on the TV.
No, I got it right now. Urban Meyer stepping down.
Oh, there we go.
His last game is going to be the Rose Bowl against Washington.
All right.
Twitter is breaking as we speak. And
who has it?
Tip of the cap to Paul Stone for alerting me to that. But now I'm seeing it everywhere. 54 years old.
Who's reporting? I don't see it anywhere.
It's all over. It's everywhere. Yahoo Sports, Pete Thamel has it. Sources, Urban Meyer to step down as Ohio State head coach after the Rose Bowl. Wow, there's your big boy.
Flesh that out for us, in case someone didn't understand what you're saying there. That you're basically, by calling the timeout before the 2-minute warning, you are allowing the offense free reign, basically.
Right. I mean, after a play, you want the other team, if you're the defense, you want the offense to be forced to feel like they need to run the football, which is the lower EV strategy to win the game. You want them to run the football such that the clock will tick, but they won't get the first down.
The other semifinal, you have Clemson and Notre Dame, and I kind of like the dog a little bit. It's going to be a contrarian play here. I think Clemson's going to get an avalanche of action from the public in this game. Number was 11 when it opened at most places, actually 11.5 now at the South Point. And Clemson, I think, will close. I'm going to guess Clemson closes as a 13-point favorite.
I might even go 13.5, Matt. And I think you're right that the action will go that way. People saw Clemson last.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
Week 13 featured a few questionable calls by the officials, and Warren Sharp and Gil Alexander had some things to say about it this week on A Numbers Game.
I think the thing that bothered people the most about the NFL last week, if I could make one, a few things bothered people, but maybe the one that stuck out the most was the Eagles-Cowboys game and the officiating on both the opening kickoff, that the Eagles clearly recovered and didn't get the ball, and there was a whole thing there. And then the Dallas Goedert 75-yard touchdown with the phantom offensive PI. That was then there was a makeup call after that for the Cowboys. I guess my question to you is, do you ever recall a game? I know we've all complained about calls in the past in games, and they've affected our bets. But do you ever remember a game that was just that poorly officiated from beginning to end? Did that set a new standard for you, that game?
Well, that's a tough question to put it in context of all the games that I think have had poor calls over the years, because there's been a lot of them, a lot of questionable decision making within the NFL. One of the reasons why I think more calls should be reviewable by instant replay. I mean, what's the point, especially if they're game-changing calls like that? But from the context of that game, where these penalties occurred and these calls were wrong at such key moments of the game, turnovers and touchdowns are two of the biggest like game changers. That's how teams win games.
Doesn't get bigger.
4
Yeah.
points, so they get takeaways. And the opening kickoff of the game, there's a clear fumble, a clear recovery, in my opinion, because the pile consists of 3 Eagles players, with Cowboys then coming in late, like trying to reach their arm in, but they're not even part of the pile. And to say that the Eagles didn't clearly recover that, they would have the ball at the 18-yard line of Dallas with 15, with just under 15 minutes to go in the first quarter of the game on the road, a game that goes to overtime. That possession clearly could have swung things. And then you've got the Dallas Goedert touchdown, which, I mean, that was nonsense to call OPI, offensive pass interference, on that penalty. And that was a touchdown. It took off like a 60-yard touchdown or something
75.
off the board.
Yeah.
So 75. Eventually they got down there and they scored a touchdown, but it took time off the clock, and then the game obviously goes to overtime. So I think that those 2 calls were horrendous. There were some other like roughing the passer calls that were bad as well that did favor Dallas, but those 2 calls in particular, taking points off the board and taking the ball away from a team in field goal range at a minimum, were just horrendous. There's no excuse for the NFL for that, and I still think to this date, I mean, it's Thursday morning here, the NFL has not commented on that game at all, on those calls at all. Normally they come back after the game and say, we were correct in calling this, we weren't correct, here's why, we were wrong here. They haven't issued any type of statements whatsoever about that officiation, which was blatant in my opinion.
Yeah, and here's one of your tweets. These 2 calls were absurd, and if you fire a ref for a missed false start, and that was a reference to a Chargers game, if I'm not mistaken, where a non-false start was called. The Chargers scored a touchdown on the play against the Browns at Cleveland. And you correctly point out, if you fire a ref for a missed false start, what do you do here? Huge impact and outcome. The first play can't have 100% of the pile be from one team, the Eagles, and say no clear recovery. And then, number 2, the play we're referring to, you can't call OPI within 5 yards, blown past the defender with glancing contact and no grabbing. 75-yard touchdown to Dallas Goedert. You're right, the Eagles did eventually score, but as my Eagles fan friend Brian correctly said to me, when I call it makeup calls against the Cowboys, he goes, there's no such thing as a makeup call for a 75-yard touchdown. He's right. There's no guarantee the Eagles are able to matriculate down the field after that. So for me, it was egregious. The other thing from last week, and we'll move on to this week after this, I promise, but the other thing that you pointed out, I want to tell you, Warren, that me and my buddy E, when you posted this the night of the Bears-Rams game, on was it Sunday night, was that game? Or was it Monday night? It was Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken. The Bears and Rams, yeah, because Seattle and the Vikings were Monday night. We, to each other, were like, oh, my God, I can't believe Warren beat us to the punch on this because we've been talking about it for a year, and I kept meaning to bring it up. But it's this loophole in the rules. And you tweeted about this, and it was so great. The Bears were up in this game with roughly 7+ minutes left in the game. And you called it here at Twitter. Next level time wasting here. Bears intentionally have number 84 take a false start penalty so the game clock will burn another 25 seconds before the punt. I retweeted what you tweeted then on Twitter after that. It is such a loophole. I've wanted to talk about this for a long time. Teams... It's so clear, by the way, we should just say for journalistic purposes that Matt Nagy denied that they did this on purpose, but you know how that goes. But while the announcers were sitting there saying, oh, they're getting an extra 5 yards for, punting room, we clearly knew, those of us who bet on the sport, we clearly knew what they were doing here. 25 seconds of game clock is so much more important than the 5 yards at that juncture in the game. And my question to you, Warren, is how long have you noticed this for as long as we have perhaps, and why don't teams exploit this multiple times? Why don't they do it repetitively until, someone flags them, I guess, for unsportsmanlike? You could conceivably do it repeatedly.
I believe, well, first of all, there are not enough teams that study the rules. That is a fact. Teams need to study the rules a lot more than what they do because there are plenty of different loopholes along like this. This only works when the clock is outside of 2 minutes in the second quarter or outside of 5 minutes in the fourth quarter.
Right.
And the clock will run after the penalty is either accepted or declined. So some people are like, well, why didn't the Rams just decline the penalty? Well, they could have. The clock is still going to run. And at that point, like you mentioned, time is worth more than those 5 yards, especially when you're talking about a punter. I mean, these punts have a lot of variance to them. but generally speaking, like the average is going to be the average. And so you're talking about adding an initial, taking away like 25 seconds off the game clock. That's a pretty massive amount of the remainder of that game. More coaches need to be focusing on loopholes in the rules, taking advantage of everything that they possibly can. Eventually, they should remove some of this from the rule book, but until they do, I don't see why more teams don't do it, and especially on national TV, the announcers completely clueless to this.
Completely.
You watch Monday Night Football, you watch Sunday Night Football, you hear these guys talking, you really wonder, what are they paying the guy who's supposed to be in their ear helping give them ideas about things? Because these guys seem to just go on their rants and talk about things that have no correlation to sometimes the game that we're watching on the field or different edges. They're just talking about things that are totally just like playoff possibilities for AFC teams in the heart of like a game between two NFC teams where there's something that they could be pointing out that would be of interest to the viewers. I don't know what they're doing, but at any rate, they clearly missed this, and it definitely is an edge.
Yeah, and it's another example of how sports bettors are so much more keenly aware of stuff like this than people who do not bet. Because whichever side you're on in this game, if you're on the Bears side, you're like, yes, just milk it, just keep going with that. And you're right, 5 minutes is the cutoff point in the fourth quarter. I did not know it was 2 minutes in the second quarter. Or if you're on the other side, if you're on the Rams in that game and you're already in this feudal position, this position of desperation where Jared Goff is just melting in the in the cold. As ridiculous as that sounds, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they get to restart the clock. Like, what is happening here? Shouldn't they? How are they restarting? And those of us who bet, we've all seen this situation before. It's a football free-for-all.
Gil, let me add to
yeah,
that.
please.
Let me interrupt you real quick. What they should be doing in the second quarter, people are like, why would they waste time in the second quarter? Because I could see at the end of the game. Well, if the other team burns its timeouts to get the ball back, let's say you go on first down and maybe you get a 5-yard or you get sacked, and so it's second and long. Teams, generally speaking, like with 3 minutes left in the game or in the half, are going to start calling timeouts to try to get that ball back for their team to have possession. And so all you need to do there is when you have to punt the ball on fourth down, if that clock is moving, take one of these types of penalties to give that other team, the ball back on the other side of the 2-minute warning with no timeouts left. So there is an advantage to using it in the first half as well.
100%. Billy, I was thinking of you earlier because I can't remember if it was FanDuel or DraftKings in New Jersey. But they're offering like props on where Le'Veon Bell is going next year, which team he'll end up on. I can't remember which it was, so forgive me on that. But I thought about you and I thought about our conversations before about how Nevada has to do better. And it's not the casinos in Nevada, it's not the sports books, it's the fact that gaming in Nevada is this obstacle that everything you do here sports betting wise has to go through this approval process. And here they are now in other jurisdictions unfettered, being able to offer stuff like that. Like, this has to change in Nevada quick.
Wow, that's amazing. It's funny you mentioned that because there's FanDuel and DraftKings in Jersey there, but I think the DraftKings office is here.
Yes.
I believe. FanDuel doing a great job, by the way, at the Meadowlands now. I'm hearing from some people that send me some tweets over and even booking those type of prop bets. So they're doing very, very good. DraftKings, on the other hand, still denying bets. Charging, taking $50 wagers and basically what it is the guys that are probably in fantasy or just people that are good at props are doing the bookmaking for them and straightening out their lines. So I have to throw that in there. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's funny because as the season goes on here, when the playoffs start and stuff, all of the sports books here in town do a lot of different propositional wagers. I didn't think Jersey was going to be ready because it was so, it was just rushed to get open, and they're actually doing a pretty good job at putting up some different type of wagers like that. I don't know, I kind of threw the conversation in a different direction, but
But there's cash out options now available too.
Yes.
We talked about the boosters on props as well. All these creative things.
Didn't they cash out on Alabama? Someone pay a future on
FanDuel did that.
Oh, FanDuel
total publicity.
Right
out of the UK marketing book, right, where you pay out. So with Alabama, FanDuel paid out.
Right.
You know, they put out a big press release about it, and AP went out. And I was mentioning Darren Ravel was all too eager to run with the story, but it's not out of what the educated bettor should know is that it's not out of benevolence. It's a marketing tool that is like, hey, look what we're doing. We're going to pay these out. So Alabama hasn't even won this, but you know what? If you have an Alabama ticket, we're going to pay you already.
Right.
And so they've already done the calculations in their head, right? They've already done, well, if Alabama's a favorite by this amount and by this amount, and even if they end up having, you know, if somebody else ends up winning it, it's such a smart marketing tool for them, because in the future, again, you know, just to give one simple example, if there's a bet, a prop or whatever it is, and it's the same number at one shop at FanDuel and at another, the average bettor's going to be like, oh, FanDuel, wasn't they the ones that gave out all that money? I'll go FanDuel.
Right.
It's calculated.
It's okay. We'll give them. Well, you know, I'm very tough on sports books, so when they have to get a little bit of praise, I'll be happy to. Right now, I'm praising FanDuel, but I'm still keeping my eye on you over there at the Meadowlands.
All right, I like it. Watchdog.
It's halftime here on Inside the Numbers. When we return, we take a look at the lines for this week's Westgate Super Contest.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
Actually, it can be a little bit more difficult to handicap the bowl games. And one of the reasons is that a lot of these teams playing each other don't really have much history playing each other. I mean, you might have two schools that have been around 100 years, and they only have 3 games historically. And the last time they played, they had completely different coaches, obviously none of the same players. So it can be a little more difficult. Plus, they don't share as many common opponents as you would have for two teams within the same conference playing each other any given week.
Bowl season, different animal than the regular season for 3 big reasons. Time off, motivation, and coaching changes. Normally a college team plays once a week. Bowl season, they've been off for several weeks. Sometimes they've been off even a month. What's happened in that time? Some of these teams have coaching changes. You're dealing with new coaches, interim coaches, outgoing coaches. Completely different team, completely different culture than you've dealt with all season long. Finally, the matter of motivation. They've been gone for several weeks. Who's prepared? Who's unprepared? Who's rusty? Who doesn't want to be there? Who's motivated? Who's discouraged? Factor these in. It is much different, much harder to handicap than the regular season.
I think when it looks at bowl season and how difficult it may be to set lines, a lot's on matchups and who the teams are. Sometimes a team is really excited to be in a bowl game, and maybe a team that didn't play well during the season, they're not so excited. So we look at that all the time. There's certain coaches that have 2 and 3 weeks to prepare that we look at. There's a lot of factors that go into it. I don't think it's really hard, but I think we just have to really look at all those factors. We're in an information era, and there's plenty of that out there.
College football bowl games really aren't that hard to, in a sense, put a number to, only because you have so much time from when the season ends to actually when the game is. Now, naturally, between that time, you're obviously a little careful of understanding what can happen with the schoolwork. Why would I say that, Jimmy? There's been a lot of kids with their midterms who don't pass the test, then are ineligible for the bowl game. It's happened quite a few times. It's something you really look forward to. But on the other hand, it's really not as hard as people make it out to be, only because of the time lapse from end of season to the bowl game itself.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
It's the most famous football betting contest in the country, the Westgate Super Contest. Eric Osterman filled in for John Murray this week and joined Brent Musburger and the rest of the guys in the desert to reveal the static lines for Week 15.
We go to the Arizona Cardinals. 1 week they're flying high, then they become a disaster again at home. Now they travel into Atlanta. The Falcons can score, my friends. The Falcons can score. What do we have about the Falcons and the Cardinals?
Falcons are 8.5 in this one, and you're right. I think the Cardinals have been somewhat of a hard team to figure out for bettors. Atlanta, they're never going to have difficulty scoring. It's just a matter if they can slow down the other team. So 8.5 in this one.
Vinny, what do you think about the 8.5? Just so everybody knows, Matt Ryan's performance, that's not the reason why the Falcons are losing. Trust me, they had injuries. Their defense has not been good. He can score, and he's going to have to if they can win this one by 10.
Brent, and the 8.5 has held steady all week long, too, so I'm sure that entered into the equation with Eric and the guys over there. But you're absolutely right. This is a matter of who can put points on the board. Even if they get behind, they can put points up against an Arizona Cardinal team.
You know, Brent, the one thing that shocks me, I look at this Arizona team, it is unbelievable how few points they're scoring. They're averaging less than 14 points a game.
Yep.
In today's NFL, that's hard to do.
I know. You have to work at that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I have to tell you, having seen them in person, Josh Rosen, you actually can believe in him a little bit. Now, he hasn't carved anybody up, and his numbers are not that good, but he'll come up with some great throws from time to time, as he did. Obviously, it was against the Raiders secondary, but I think there's a future there for that young man. We'll see. Anyway, let's go to the late games. Nick Mullins, one of the finds of the year, keeping the 49ers almost in every contest, and they host the amazing Seattle Seahawks. Pete Carroll done a great job with his coaching staff. The Seahawks go on the road to place the 49ers.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. We opened at 6 over the counter. We're down to 4.5, and that's the line we decided to use on the contest. Like you said, Nick Mullins is keeping the 49ers in almost every game, and the Seahawks have come off of a couple of pretty big games, so possibly a bit of a letdown spot in a game that they should win.
Yeah, very interesting in all this one.
You know what? They've got this line right at the 4.5. I thought the 6 was a little bit too high. It's a huge revenge spot. Keep in mind, they played just 2 weeks ago. The 49ers got blown out. One of the things that people, if you're a casual bettor, you may overlook is that a team gets blown out and you simply say, oh, Seattle should win this one. The idea of getting embarrassed, Brent, is a great motivator.
Absolutely, especially with professional athletes. And now the game that I couldn't decide, I wonder who they'll make the favorite, and we're about to find out. The New England Patriots travel into Pittsburgh, both coming off very disappointing performances. The Patriots in South Florida, the Steelers in Oakland. Patriots and the Steelers, Eric.
Patriots are 2.5 in Pittsburgh in this game. The Steelers really haven't looked like the dominant team that they're supposed to be. Patriots' loss last week was a bit of a fluke. We think they're going to go into Pittsburgh with a really good game plan, and they're going to be the favorite in this one, 2.5.
Vinny, you were absolutely right. Patriots are the favorite.
Brent, and there's good reason for that, too. First of all, you look at the success in recent years that they've had, including in Pittsburgh. Here's the ultimate question. Both coaches have acknowledged some mistakes that they personally made last week. Now it comes down to the players as well. Who do you trust to make the better adjustments in such a short week? It's obviously the Patriots, and that's come into play here.
You know, Brent, I think Vinny and Eric make some good points, particularly when it comes to this number. But here's my thing. I like Pittsburgh at home. I think they bounced back after a couple of tough losses. Actually, now it's 3 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. Denver, the Chargers, and then, of course, this game against the Raiders. I still think there's enough talent and ability there. It's just been one mistake after another. And here's the other thing. It's not necessarily about Pittsburgh. It's about the fact that, to me, New England isn't quite as good as they've been in years past.
I did hear Bill Polian last night when I was driving home. And it was interesting because he said that the Steelers are flawed in the defensive backfield. Now, I'm coming off a game in which Derek Carr hit several big passes against them. And Bill went on to say that the front seven performing very well. The two edge rushers, we know, the young man from Kentucky and Watt, one of the Watt brothers, on the other side. But he said if they don't fix the secondary, they're not going to beat anybody. They play the Patriots and the Saints in back-to-back weeks. It was interesting hearing from somebody on the outside. I when you're doing a game, you don't really jump on a unit. Bill sat back and looked at film of it. But he did say something that caught my attention. He said, when it comes to adjustments and getting ready off a loss, which coaching staff do you trust the most? Okay, and he didn't even have to answer it. I knew exactly what he was saying when he said it. So, Mamal makes good points about the Steelers and the fact that they're at home. They've been looking for this game, and also though the fact that their kicking situation's a little shaky. So I'm throwing out a lot of things in favor of the Patriots, so everybody knows which way I'm leaning. But anyway, let's go to Sunday night with Eric Osterman over at the Superbook. He's given us the lines. The Philadelphia Eagles without Carson Wentz playing the Los Angeles Raiders. You fellas have to be very happy that you caught that news early on this line, because I'm sure you increased it. What do you have, Eric, on the Eagles at the Rams?
Yeah, you're right, Brent. We're happy we got that news before the contest line came out. And we have the Rams as an 11-point favorite. Carson Wentz really hasn't been playing up to his level so far this year, so not a huge adjustment, but there's going to be a little bit. And the Rams looking to bounce back off of a poor showing against Chicago.
Amal, I love your reaction to this line.
I think it's a complete overreaction. The reality is Carson Wentz hasn't been that good this year. Brian, if you go back over the last several weeks, and historically, quarterbacks, when coming back off of a knee injury, don't play particularly well in the first year back. If you look at some of the crossing routes and easy throws that we've seen Wentz make in the first 2 years, he's been unable to do so this year. And I think there's not a drop-off this year between Foles and Wentz.
We all know when we saw Foles on the big stage.
Yeah. A little bit of irony here in the sense that this was the game that Wentz got hurt last year. Was against these Rams.
That's right. Diving into the end zone.
Diving into the end zone, and Foles had to come in and prevail.
Okay, now a Monday nighter. A contrast. The New Orleans Saints here in Las Vegas, and I'm assuming globally too, are the favorite to win the Super Bowl right now, although I would think in some precincts the Kansas City Chiefs are probably fair. But at any rate, the Saints are right there. They travel into Carolina, and this Panthers team is in full retreat. And with a new owner down there, and he came from the hedge fund world, and I got to tell you, hedge fund managers do not demonstrate a lot of patience. This coaching staff is under the gun, folks. Saints at the Panthers, Eric.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. We opened 7 on this game here at the Westgate, and we're down to 5.5. That's the line we chose to use on the contest. Saints offense really hasn't been as potent as we've seen them. The last couple of weeks, not quite the high-flying team we're used to seeing. Carolina is going to get 5.5 in this one.
Okay, Amal, are you surprised about this?
I'm not surprised by the number, and I thought you brought up a great point with the new ownership group. I think there's going to be some pressure there, and I wouldn't even be surprised, unfortunately, if there's a change in terms of Ron Rivera. But in this particular game, this is a stay away for me. Eric made a great point. He said the Saints' offense has struggled. Look what happened in Dallas. Tampa, they came back. Luckily, it was started by a blocked punt.
Okay. So, Eric, some folks are certainly joining us right now. We're near the bottom of the hour. Radio people come and go all the time. Take everybody through the top. We're talking to Eric Osterman. He's over at the Westgate Superbook, and these are the lines, the static lines that we will use for the Super Contest and the Super Contest Gold, week number 15. Eric, let everybody know what the entire card looks like.
All right, Brent, we've got the Chiefs as a 3.5-point favorite at home on Thursday against the Chargers. Jets getting 6 at home against the Texans. Broncos are a 3-point favorite at home against the Browns. Vikings laying 7 at home against the Dolphins. The Bengals are a 3-point favorite at home against your Raiders. Ravens minus 7.5 at home against the Bucks. The Cowboys are catching 3 on the road in Indianapolis. Bills minus 2.5 at home against the Lions. Bears are a 6-point favorite at home against the Packers. Giants minus 2.5 at home against the Titans. The Redskins are a 7-point underdog in Jacksonville. Falcons minus 8.5 at home against the Cardinals. Seahawks 4.5 on the road in San Francisco. Steelers are a 2.5-point dog at home against the Patriots. Rams 11-point home favorite against the Eagles. And the Saints are a 5.5-point road favorite in Carolina.
Okay, it is that time when my gang over at the Superbook and John Murray handed me out a winner last week with the Chicago Bears. It pained him greatly not to give me his Cleveland Browns, but I took them anyway, Eric. And so, in honor of John, they helped me through to a 4-1 week. Every now and then, you got to get lucky. So, what did you and John and the guys decide that you should give VSiN 1 this week?
Well, we're going to go with the Browns. No, I'm just kidding, Brent. It's just kind of a reaction from us over here right now to go with the Browns, but we're actually going to go with the Colts in this one. The Cowboys came off of a huge win against the Eagles. Could possibly be a letdown spot for them, and really the Colts, the entire team is playing well right now. The defense is clicking. We think that they're going to take care of the Cowboys at home.
All right, so I never at all mind being on my old buddy Andrew Luck. He's awesome. I'll be checking to see how many healthy tight ends he's got. I want T.Y. Hilton healthy. He's got a tackling machine, a rookie over there at linebacker. So I know that I'm standing in front of that Cowboy defense and our old buddy Dak Prescott. But I'll gladly go with the Indianapolis Colts. They're a home team. That's a manageable number, 3. You got a chance to wind up with a push in that situation also. So I never mind that. Listen, it's been a great. Now, tell me, before I let you go, Eric, isn't there a mini contest that starts this week too? The contest within the contest? Tell me about that.
That's right. The mini contest is the last 3 weeks of the slate. Your record is basically wiped clean. If you had signed up for the contest for the early bird section, you automatically got put into the mini contest. You got a chance to pick up a little bit of dough if you haven't had the best season.
So my gang up in Montana, VSiN 2, they got a chance to cash after all.
We aren't quite done with the Super Contest just yet. More from Brent Musburger and the guys in the desert when we return.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
But the other thing is, and you were talking about it before we went on, Raiders plus 550 on the money line.
Exactly.
You want to go ahead and put a little on the side, just aside from taking the points.
Right.
That's very, very tempting.
Now, listen, obviously everybody knows I'm a little bit biased, but I have not pushed anybody in that direction all year. No, did I intend to, but I said, wait a minute, that's an inflated number without James Conner. That's one that's going to get corrected as the week moves on. And the Raiders were impressive last week. I have to tell you, the Chiefs, we know, a Super Bowl contender, but they were good, and they didn't yield until the fourth quarter.
Where they at on the Warriors now? They moved that because they get a lot of Warriors. They're 170 now. The yes/no. Think about that. File that one away. December 4th. Talk to me in May. December 4th. The Warriors are available minus 170 to win the title. Okay. Cousins is coming back. Schedule's getting easy.
Where do you think it goes?
They have
$3?
Oh, they're gonna rip off a long win. They're gonna rip off like it feels like 15-1 coming here.
When you hear about how wonderful these coaches are, they just say it. They win. They don't show what they do on a basketball court that's so wonderful. Do you ever see them diagram a Coach K play or show something terrific he did on defense that changed the game? The answer is no, because that won't happen. He's not a very good coach. He's a good CEO. That's the way someone described me once. And, I think that's like perfect.
I'm not a big fan of handicapping or betting AFC South games. I think it's kind of like a hound's breakfast. Just a bunch of crap thrown into a bowl, and you don't know what you're going to get from one week to the next.
That's right.
Huh?
It's a tough division. Yeah. They play each other very close almost every single time.
And then and then the Titans, the Texans have won 9 in a row. But I mean, we've talked about it over and over how lucky they've been during this 9-game win streak. You have to give them credit for winning the close games.
Yep.
But it's not like the Titans are a dominant team.
Yeah, and
Texans.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
It's time to return to the Super Contest static lines for Week 15.
What a party, Vinny and Amal, we are going to have in Las Vegas in 2020 with the NFL Draft. I mean, make your plans now. Come on out. You'll be able to bet on it probably up to about 24 hours before it starts. At least that's what I would expect the bookies to come up with here, Vinny.
No doubt, Brent. We've had it the last couple of years. It's been very well received, a lot of fun. And if you think, I think one of the greatest PR moves the NFL's made in recent years is to rotate the NFL draft, and no doubt it'll be very exciting here.
Yeah, it really, Maul might even have a wager or two on that. How are you, big fella?
I'm well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. Unfortunately, already bad news on the horizon for 2020. Tua looks like he might be the first pick in that draft.
All right. So it is time indeed to check in on the Super Contest at the Westgate. And we go over to Eric Osterman live, who is standing by. Eric, how's everything over at the Westgate today, my friend?
It's a good day over here at the Westgate. Thanks for having me on, Mr. Musburger. Guys, always a pleasure.
Good to see you, Eric.
You don't need to emphasize that, mister. Let's just go with Brent.
All right, whatever you want, Brent. I'm all for it.
All right, my friend. Let's move to Sunday. The early game, the Miracle Workers from South Florida. The Miami Dolphins go up to play perhaps the most disappointing team of the season. There were a lot of folks that thought not only were the Vikings going to win the NFC North, but they were going to pursue a Super Bowl. What do we do with the Dolphins and the Vikings, Eric?
Yeah, this is a really interesting game. We have the Vikings as a 7-point favorite. Kind of don't really know what to make of this one. Like you said, Miami had that miracle win against the Patriots, and the Vikings have to have this game. We couldn't really do anything besides 7 on this one. The action would be swayed either way if we added the hook.
And, Amal, the Dolphins have not traveled that well. I think they won their opening road game and probably haven't won one since that I can recall.
You're absolutely right. 6-1 at home this year, but on the road, they've just been horrendous this year. So to me, Brent, what concerns me is Minnesota played Monday night. Quick turnaround. You're laying 7 points here. I'm just not sure how. Look, they have a shot at the postseason, but how engaged is this team in the sense that do they really believe in themselves?
Mm-hmm. Okay, now the Oakland Raiders, coming off their best win of the season at home against Pittsburgh, traveled to play the lowly Cincinnati Bengals. What did we do with the Raiders and the Bengals in the Super Contest, Eric?
The Bengals are going to be a 3-point favorite at home in this one. We considered 2.5. The Raiders, like you said, coming off of a really big win, and the Bengals don't really seem to show a whole lot of life behind Jeff Driscoll, but we thought that at 2.5, everyone would be all over the home team in this one, and Joe Mixon's really starting to run the ball well, so we went with 3 in this one.
Yeah, Joe Mixon ran very well against the Chargers last week, Benny.
Yeah, Brent, and when you look at this game, too, it's a matter of it's just a home field, the field goal for the home field here, and, the Raiders on the road, Bengals. I can't imagine, frankly, that this game, given the card that everybody's playing this week, that this one will be a major selection. But the field goal does prompt people to take a look at it.
Okay, we're speaking with Eric Osterman over at the Superbook at the Westgate. And these are the lines for the Super Contest and the Super Contest Gold for week number 15. The Baltimore Ravens cooled off a bit, traveling to Kansas City. That'll do that for you. And Lamar Jackson will be back at quarterback. No big surprise there. He's been winning, and he's been producing on the field. And now the Ravens will host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Eric. What do we do here?
This one we have is the Ravens minus 7.5. That was a really tough loss for them last week, and they really need this game to keep pace with the Steelers, who, are going into a must-win game of their own. And Tampa really hasn't been what you necessarily call a pushover. They've been playing decently, but 7.5 in this one for the Ravens.
And Amal, you liked the Ravens last week with the points. They got it done in Kansas City. They, of course, would have much rather had the W, but, when you're betting, you'll take those wins. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely right. And, Brent, Lamar Jackson's going to get the start in this one instead of Joe Flacco, who's just announced that he'll be the starter. to me, I think they'll have the opportunity to really run the ball effectively against that Tampa defense. That defense has been poor all year, and I think the Ravens defense can shut down Tampa Bay pretty comfortably.
Okay, the final one, Eric, before we take a break here. The Dallas Cowboys, who have suddenly put it all together, they roll up into Indianapolis to play Andrew Luck and the Colts. Cowboys and the Colts.
Yeah, we have the Colts as a 3-point home favorite in this one. Cowboys are playing extremely well. It came off of a huge emotional win for them. The Colts also with a division win, so this is going to be a good one. Colts defense has been playing pretty well. This could be one of the closer games of the week.
Exactly. Okay. So, Eric Osterman over at the Superbook on tomorrow night's game. The Chiefs favored by 3.5 over the Chargers. Saturday, Texans are a touchdown or a 6-point favorite going in to play the Jets. Then the Broncos at home in the second game Saturday afternoon are a 3-point favorite over the Cleveland Browns. 4 of the Sunday card, Minnesota Vikings coming off a very disappointing performance and loss in Seattle. They will be a 7-point favorite over the Miami Dolphins. The Cincinnati Bengals will be a 3-point favorite at home hosting the Oakland Raiders. The Baltimore Ravens, a 7.5-point choice over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that game in Baltimore. And finally, Indianapolis at home, 3-point favorite over the red-hot Dallas Cowboys. So let us go back to the Detroit Lions visiting the Buffalo Bills. What do we have on the Lions and the Bills, Eric?
The Bills are laying 2.5 in this one, which should end up being the least popular game of the Sunday slate. Not a whole lot of interest in this one, but Bills 2.5-point favorite at home.
Yeah, I imagine the television market will be Buffalo and Detroit, and that will be about it. Meanwhile, there is a game down the way, just south of the tip of Lake Michigan, that will draw a lot of interest. The Green Bay Packers go into Chicago, Eric, to play the Bears. What did you hang on this one?
Bears are going to be a 6-point favorite in this game. The Bears defense is playing absolutely incredible football right now. They won that Rams game in spite of Mitchell Trubisky, really not really playing up to a high level coming off of that injury. They're going to be a 6-point favorite against the Packers in this one.
Vinny, there's going to be a lot of action on this game.
Brent, I believe, this will be one of the more heavily wagered games of the weekend over the counter. And I could see where there's a case to be made in the contest to pick either side here, really.
I agree. And Amal, you know me, I'm teasing the Bears to 0.
Well, I think right now the way they're playing, I don't see a problem with it. Look, it's a revenge spot for the Bears. They blew that game in Green Bay earlier this year. I also think if you compare the two teams from when they played, I think it was week 2, the Bears are appreciably better than they were back in week 2, in my opinion.
And the Packers maybe not so much?
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay. Eric, the Tennessee Titans go into New York. Sort of interesting, isn't it? In the Meadowlands, they'll have the Jets at home Saturday. The Giants are at home on Sunday, hosting the Titans.
Yeah, it's great for the New York market. Wish I could be there and catch both of those games. It'd be quite a weekend. We went with 2.5 on this game. One of those where we thought if we went with 3, we'd see nothing but Titans action. So 2.5 in this one.
So the Giants are a home favorite of 2.5. Amal, we talk about disappointing teams, but I have to tell you, one of the more improved teams on the season, I'm looking at this Giant team.
Well, Brent, you bring up a great point. They've won 4 out of 5. How many people, if you just pulled them real quickly, said which team's won 4 out of 5 in this league right now? I don't think the Giants would be on anybody's list.
And the only reason it's not a little bit higher is because of the performance of Derrick Henry in the game that the Titans had, right? But
exactly.
I could see the point here. I think the Giants are going to be pretty popular this week.
And Beckham, they're hopeful.
Should be back.
I heard Coach Shermer earlier today, and he said he felt much better than at the end of last week. So I think there's a very good chance that they'll have one of their big weapons back. And meanwhile, I'm not quite sure what to make of this game. The Jacksonville Jaguars, of course, have been a key disappointment. But the Washington Redskins are just injury-riddled and working on, I guess Josh Johnson will probably draw the start, I would think, ahead of Sanchez. But anyway, Eric Osterman of the Superbook, for the contest, what line did you put on the Redskins at the Jaguars?
Jaguars are -7 at home in this game. Really looking for some solid quarterback play in this one. No, it should be a pretty low-scoring affair, and we think that Jacksonville should have no problem handling the Redskins and whoever they roll out there.
Look at this total. Eric is all over it. 36.
The old school total.
This is real old school right here.
I used to see 36s in the 70s.
That was because of defense. This is because of poor offenses.
Amal, what do you make of the Jaguars? It's hard to believe they're a 7-point favorite, but the Redskins, they're an ambulance case.
They really are, but I just can't see the justification with Jacksonville at this price, Brent. This is a team that's been horrendous all year long. Remember, when they beat the Colts, they shut them out, but they only scored 6 points.
Exactly.
Here at VSiN, we don't just look at this week's matchups, we prepare you for the future with a look ahead to next week as well on Follow the Money. Next on Inside the Numbers.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
You know where we got our ass kicked, Brent? Is the first season with the USFL, because we didn't have a clue.
Right.
But we had to throw numbers up there because you had to do something with the strike and USFL and all the rest of the stuff. We lowered the limits, but if we broke even for the week, everybody was satisfied. The Smarts had it way, way ahead of us as far as that was concerned way back when.
They had some great players in there. Steve Young, Jim Kelly, Herschel Walker.
Yeah, sure.
Wow, we have some humongous breaking news this morning. Humongous.
Redskins claimed Hunt?
This is as big as it gets.
Oh, no.
Yep.
How do you have it? There's nothing on the TV.
No, I got it right now. Urban Meyer stepping down.
Oh, there we go.
His last game is going to be the Rose Bowl against Washington.
All right.
Twitter is breaking as we speak. And
who has it?
Tip of the cap to Paul Stone for alerting me to that. But now I'm seeing it everywhere. 54 years old.
Who's reporting? I don't see it anywhere.
It's all over. It's everywhere. Yahoo Sports, Pete Thamel has it. Sources: Urban Meyer to step down as Ohio State head coach after the Rose Bowl. Wow, there's your big boy.
Flesh that out for us, in case someone didn't understand what you're saying there. That you're basically, by calling the timeout before the 2-minute warning, you are allowing the offense free reign, basically.
Right. I mean, after a play, you want the other team, if you're the defense, you want the offense to be forced to feel like they need to run the football, which is the lower EV strategy to win the game. You want them to run the football such that the clock will tick, but they won't get the first down.
The other semifinal, you have Clemson and Notre Dame, and I kind of like the dog a little bit. It's going to be a contrarian play here. I think Clemson's going to get an avalanche of action from the public in this game. Number was 11 when it opened at most places, actually 11.5 now at the South Point. And Clemson, I think, will close. I'm going to guess Clemson closes as a 13-point favorite.
I might even go 13.5, Matt. And I think you're right that the action will go that way. People saw Clemson last.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
It's never too early to look ahead to next week's action, which is just what Mitch Moss and Paul Howard did on Follow the Money.
Week 16 National Football League. Some of the numbers to look at. Look ahead numbers here at the Superbook USA. Ravens at the Chargers. Boy, this how about the Chargers' schedule? Steelers, I know they got the break, but it wasn't an easy game against the Bengals. Now at KC tomorrow night, and then they come back home to take on Baltimore. And they listed the Chargers as a 5-point favorite.
Monster game. Big one. Big one. I guess, though, it's not that big for the Chargers if they lose, because then they're locked into their seed.
Yeah, they'd be a 5 no matter what.
So that could be big if that could be huge for the Ravens. If they lose that, then they're getting the 5 seed. But that's going to be for the win total and playoff, trying to get that 6 seed for the Ravens. Great Saturday night game. And it starts with the Redskins and Titans with a Saturday game, as the Titans are laying double digits at home against the Redskins.
I'm not surprised by that.
Josh Johnson, my God.
Right.
Yep.
And Titans are going to need that game, regardless of what happens this week, to still be in the mix in the AFC playoff chase as well. So to tie in the Chargers to the Chiefs, they play a late game, the afternoon game, in Week 16 at Seattle. And Seattle right now opened up as a 1-point favorite.
Now, that's surprising, but I'll tell you, here's what I would do. And I thought about this yesterday, and then you sent me over the line. If they win Thursday and I'm Andy Reid, I sit everybody in that game because I cannot, and they wouldn't have the 1 seed locked up yet. They would if New England would lose Sunday because they had the tiebreaker. I would not, you cannot sit guys for 2 weeks. So what are you going to say? Well, we'll go out and play Week 16 and we'll sit. With the bye week, I don't want to sit around for 2 weeks. That's a bad move. Not to mention with the Hunt business and you have new running backs and stuff. If you can't beat the Raiders at home Week 17, well, you're not going to do anything in the playoffs anyways. So I would sit everyone at Seattle and then come back. If it's already not locked up, lock up the 1 seed, play everyone against the Raiders at home, and then have another week off, and then get ready for your playoff game a week later. That's what I would do.
So you'd rather do that than play them against Seattle?
I'm not sitting guys for 2 weeks. That's lunacy.
So it would actually be 3 weeks, though, what you're talking about, right?
Well, yeah,
if they played everybody against Seattle, sit them against Oakland, you have the bye week, and then you play. That's a 3-week stretch.
I want to play. I'm playing Week 17.
I said if you didn't do that.
Well, right. You're not going to do that. That's crazy. You're not going to sit guys that long.
But. And that's what teams have done in the past, though. When they sit guys in Week 17 and they have the bye week, and it's like, wait a second here, what are we doing taking this much time off?
Uh-huh.
So they open up Seattle. The thought is here, so with the Chiefs winning tomorrow night, again, they would wrap up that division, but they're not going to wrap up the 1 seed.
That's the John Elway. The John Elway Broncos did that. They clinched very early, sat everyone, got beaten their first playoff game at home to Jacksonville. The second year they had we went to the AFC title game the second year they were in existence.
Mm-hmm. Buccaneers at the Cowboys, back-to-back games for Tampa Bay. Baltimore and the Cowboys on the road. How do you like that for those two defenses? And Dallas opened up a 7.5-point favorite at Superbook USA.
Well, it worked last week, but again, careful. Garrett is a home favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But they're on a roll right now, and they should be able to move the ball at will against Tampa.
Patriots are 13-point favorites against the Bills. Panthers opened up 6 at home against the Falcons. Boy, I mean, that's going to be a throwaway game for me. Current form right now, both those teams.
Nah, that's a pass. How about the Dolphins could do this actually, and they're probably the worst 7-6 team I've ever seen. You can't be shocked if they go into Minnesota and win. Then they would get Jacksonville at home, and then it's who is it? Jets? Is it the Jets? They get again in Week 17.
I think you're right. Yep.
Oh man, they actually somehow this team could get to 10-6. That's possible. That's not far fetched.
So that would be 2 playoff appearances for this team in 3 years, right?
Yeah, Gase made it his first year.
Yeah, because they won 9 or 10 games that year. They had the backup quarterback then, and they went to Pittsburgh, and they got roughed up there. But how is this guy in the hot seat then? To do this again with a team that's not very good? To be 7-6 in the mix?
Yeah. There were reports he was on the hot seat before the season started.
Sure.
Christ, the guy just made the playoffs.
Giants at the Colts. Indy's a 6-point favorite as of right now. Giants playing well down the stretch all of a sudden.
Feisty.
Getting it going offensively. Texans at the Eagles. That's a pick 'em.
Good game. I don't know about that. That's too much respect for the Eagles.
I would agree.
What have they done well this year? When have they looked good? When have they like, wow, okay, Eagles are going to make a run now? I mean, they couldn't put away the Redskins with Sanchez.
Right. The one game they looked good was at the Thursday night game against the Giants. That was it. Pretty much on the entire schedule.
Yeah, pretty much it.
And so, here's a thought here on this game. The Eagles would still need this game because it's such a dumpster fire for the 6 seed, but the Texans could still be playing for the 2 seed, right?
Yeah.
That's absolutely in play. Vikings 3 at the Lions.
Well, let me see how the offense looks Sunday first. Although they should be all over Stafford in that game. That's the one thing. The defense looked great. The defense was phenomenal Monday night. That's the one thing. Got to like the Packers 3.5.
Oh, you have to.
Yep, and look at this. The Browns. When's the last time the Browns were laying a touchdown? When did that happen? When did that happen? How far back do you got to go for that? 7-point favorite.
Actually, you know what? Mark Lawrence is on the show today. He has that database. Maybe we could text him if possible. I just a thought to see last time the Browns were favored by 7 points. Oh, my God. Yeah, when would that be? The Kelly Holcomb years?
You think it's that far back?
The Kelly Holcomb year. That was not plural.
All right. Yeah,
he had one good year.
Yeah. The Rams should go 14-2, by the way. They play the Eagles, then they close with, the Niners and the Cardinals, and they're 11.5 against Arizona. And you go 14-2, and you just sit back and wait for the Saints to slip up if that happens. And you got to get that 1 seed. You don't want to go to New Orleans in the NFC title game.
And the Rams blew out the Cardinals earlier this year. No surprise. Bears 6 at the 49ers.
That defense has not traveled.
I'm going to say that right now.
It hasn't traveled.
Can you see this where Mullins, at the end of the day, 375, Kittle does well, Pettis another touchdown?
Yes, I can. They couldn't. They almost lost to Arizona on the road. Needed a last-second field goal. Right.
Pittsburgh
lost to Osweiler.
Steelers at the Saints. Saints are 7. Have to be at least 7 against this team.
What's that total? Whoo. That's a big boy there.
54.5. We got Chiefs at the Seahawks we brought up already. Yeah. Seattle's -1, and the Broncos 2.5 at the Raiders.
Christmas Eve, and it'll be the final game in Oakland. Vance Joseph on the road. You could say, well, the Broncos would need it, all this. So I think they lose Saturday against Cleveland anyways, but that'll be it. That'll be an emotional scene, the final game in Oakland.
Week 17, Packers 6.5 against the Lions. I'm telling you, it could get interesting here if they beat the Bears this weekend.
That's right. Philbin's job. It's his job to lose. You know it.
Texans are actually 7.5 against the Jaguars that week. Chiefs 7 against the Raiders. Based on your theory.
Yes. Well, they're saying they're going to sit everybody.
Sure.
I don't think Andy Reid will do that. Can't they beat the Raiders with the backups anyways?
I'll tell you what right now, the Rams -9.5, that might not be a bad play if they need that game for the 1 seed. There's a really good chance they're going to need that game for the 1.
Yeah.
When we return, Sam Panayotovich, Jonathan Von Tobel, and John Murray close out the show when they take a crack at guessing the closing lines for this week's games.
Actually, it can be a little bit more difficult to handicap the bowl games. And one of the reasons is that a lot of these teams playing each other don't really have much history playing each other. I mean, you might have 2 schools that have been around 100 years, and they only have 3 games historically. And the last time they played, they had completely different coaches, obviously none of the same players. So it can be a little more difficult. Plus, they don't share as many common opponents as you would have for 2 teams within the same conference playing each other any given week.
Bowl season, different animal than the regular season for 3 big reasons. Time off, motivation, and coaching changes. Normally a college team plays once a week. Bowl season, they've been off for several weeks. Sometimes they've been off even a month. What's happened in that time? Some of these teams have coaching changes. You're dealing with new coaches, interim coaches, outgoing coaches. Completely different team, completely different culture than you've dealt with all season long. Finally, the matter of motivation. They've been gone for several weeks. Who's prepared? Who's unprepared? Who's rusty? Who doesn't want to be there? Who's motivated? Who's discouraged? Factor these in, it is much different, much harder to handicap than the regular season.
I think when it looks at bowl season and how difficult it may be to set lines, a lot's on matchups and who the teams are. Sometimes a team is really excited to be in a bowl game, and maybe a team that didn't play well during the season, they're not so excited. So we look at that all the time. There's certain coaches that have 2 and 3 weeks to prepare that we look at. There's a lot of factors that go into it. I don't think it's really hard, but I think we just have to really look at all those factors. We're in an information era, and there's plenty of that out there.
College football bowl games really aren't that hard to, in a sense, put a number to, only because you have so much time from when the season ends to actually when the game is. Now, naturally, between that time, you're obviously a little careful of understanding what can happen with the schoolwork. Why would I say that, Jimmy? There's been a lot of kids with their midterms who don't pass the test, then are ineligible for the bowl game. It's happened quite a few times. It's something you really look forward to. But on the other hand, it's really not as hard as people make it out to be, only because of the time lapse from end of season to the bowl game itself.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
We're almost out of time here on Inside the Numbers, but before we go, Sam Panayotovich, John Murray, and JVT play everyone's favorite game show, Guess the Closing Lines.
It is time for, Guess the Closing Lines. Da, da, da. That's right. Live from the VSiN studios in Las Vegas. Time to guess where we think these lines are going to end up. That's a nice watch, by the way, John. Just noticed.
You know, I decided to go, well, let me hide this. I decided to go non-headset today.
Yes.
And I made a mistake because I didn't get to hear the great theme music.
You want to play it again?
No, it's okay. It's my fault. I got to live with my choices.
Oh, that's right. You can check out the replay, VSiN.com or the VSiN app. There you go. There we go.
Actually, that's my ringtone. Is it
really?
No.
Oh, okay. That'd be great.
Be funny.
Even better if it was me going, guess the closing lines with John Murray. Miami and Minnesota up next. Of course, we know that the news here, Minnesota, new offensive coordinator. And it might seem like an overreaction too, just from what we've seen. But from the last few weeks, the Vikings have not looked like a good team.
No.
And the Dolphins, granted, this seems like a letdown spot. Big win, division rival, right, against the New England Patriots.
Huge letdown spot.
It is. But 7's a lot for a Minnesota team that really is not good.
I've watched the Dolphins on the road, though. I don't mean to cut you off there. On the road this year, they've lost 38-7, 27-17, 42-23, 31-12.
Mm-hmm.
So they get their ass kicked on the road, and there's the VStat on the screen. Last 11 games on the road, Miami 2-9 ATS. They go on the road, Murray, they get crushed.
I feel like every week I say to myself, the Miami Dolphins suck. And then I look at the standings, and they're 7. I don't know how they do it week after week. I think this number will go down. I think it'll close 6.5. I still think the Dolphins suck, though.
They're 1-5 on the road. Their only road win all season when they beat the Jets week 2, 20-12.
I mean, they're tied for the 6th spot in the playoffs, right? How is that even possible?
I don't know.
I mean, they started Brock Osweiler for like 4 games this year.
That's a good point.
It's incredible that they're still in the playoff race.
I'm going back and looking just so I can see this because the one thing maybe you can make the argument is with Ryan Tannehill back, does that make a difference? They did start the year 3-0, against the spread and straight up. They've covered the last 3 games the Miami Dolphins have. So they have, gotten their asses handed to them on the road. But Tannehill has looked all right. He looked pretty good against New England Patriots. Is that the difference?
It's a big difference when you talk about going from, not that I think Tannehill's an elite player, but the drop-off down to Osweiler I think is somewhat significant.
I still look back at that Dolphins-Bears game. Can we explain that final score?
I don't know. That's what I'm talking about. The Dolphins have all these head-scratching wins. It was like, they won that game?
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it.
They put not only did they win that game, they put 31 points on Chicago, who just held the Rams to 6.
Adam Gase had that team in the postseason his first year there somehow. I don't know how he did that either.
Yep. Cincinnati and Oakland, the Raiders, of course, hitting the road here to take on the Bengals. I got to think this has already dropped. You guys put up 3.5, went to 3. This moves through 3, right? I mean, the Raiders are going to be a team to back, and the Cincinnati Bengals have been like Fade City.
Can it really be less than 3? I think it'll close right there. Okay. I think that's the right line. Personally,
the hooks are gone too because you guys had 3.5, I think, right? You opened up 3.5, Cincy minus 3.5, and now it's 3.
I think John's right though. I think the bettors are definitely going to come in on the Raiders. Raiders in the midst of a 1-game winning streak.
They're hot, man.
And the Bengals are obviously not looking too good.
How about let's call it -3 even money?
I like it.
Okay. All right.
I like it.
Fair enough.
Baltimore opens up 7.5, now moves immediately up to 8 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baltimore's been a bet on team since Lamar Jackson has been there. Public bettors really do like them. I'm going to say this maybe goes up. Not too far. I'll say ceiling is 9.
I'll say 8.5. But, it's hard to see know how Baltimore's going to react. That was such a devastating loss for them last Sunday. But, their offense has been much better with Lamar Jackson in there. They're running the football well. They're very well coached. Tampa Bay is coached by Dirk Cutter.
Yes.
So I would say they're not very well coached.
I'm in the minority here. I think the Sharps will be on the Bucks plus the 8. I don't think they're going to rush to lay 8 with Lamar Jackson, who has actually been really good at the window.
I like what I've seen from Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, but the Buccaneers offense, they can score. So people will take the 8. I think it's going to close at 7.
Okay, and 3-1 against the spread with Jackson, by the way. Yeah.
Good rookie quarterback class. Baker Mayfield looks like a surefire star. I think Allen is going to be a star.
Yeah.
And I really like Lamar Jackson.
And Darnold has
like
shown
Darnold,
he's got some arm talent.
Yeah.
Rosen, not great.
Rosen is in a tough situation. Their coaching staff is a disaster.
Dallas and Indianapolis. This is already -3 even money. Indianapolis Colts, of course, at home. 2.5 here, and that's where I think this goes. I think the Cowboys are going to be the team to back, the better defensive team, and I think 2.5 is probably where you close by the time you get to Sunday.
I'm gonna say 3. Okay. I think it'll go up a little bit. I mean, the Colts. It's talk about a well-coached team, the Indianapolis Colts, and Dallas. They basically wrapped up the NFC East on Sunday. I don't know what they really have to play for down the stretch. They're going to be either the 3 seed or the 4 seed. They're not going to get a bye.
Yeah.
And they're going to win the East. I don't know. I'm not saying they don't care, but their motivation's not going to be what it was on Sunday.
This is also the first the first road game in a month for Dallas. They've been enjoying the home cooking quite a bit down in Texas. I did pick 2.5. I laid 2.5 in Point Spread Weekly, so I think it does get back to 3. But if you like the Colts, shop around. South Point stations have 2.5 right now. I'd lay it now. I think it goes back to 3.
Some of those calls Dallas got on Sunday, if they can take those on the road with them, I like their chances.
Well, now they're a public team. Well, they already were a public team. Let's be real. They're a public team. But after beating the Saints at home, and now you have a sizable lead in the division, the public is going to go, oh, maybe they are pretty good.
Their defense is really good.
Yes, that is legitimate.
They need to stick to the formula of giving the ball to Ezekiel Elliott and trying to stretch the field with Cooper and let their defense win games.
3 touchdowns for Cooper yesterday.
That third touchdown was a little fortunate, Sammy.
You think so?
I thought it was a little bit of a fluke play.
First game with Cooper was at Philadelphia, or was it the game after?
I think it was against the Titans.
It was against the Titans. Okay,
Yeah,
so
They lost that game, but they've won every game since
5-1 since they've acquired Cooper. Then they've been. He's been a pretty good. I still think they overpaid for him, but a very good addition for him.
Whoever is doing the drafting in Dallas knows what he's doing. I don't know who that person is. I know in theory it's Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
Somebody is in his ear, and that person knows what he's doing.
I brought that up over the weekend with Lombardi. I was like, do we dare give Jones credit for the draft, especially on the defensive side of the ball? Like, if he is the guy indeed pulling the trigger, do we give him credit for what he's done, especially with the linebackers? I mean, what they've done.
Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith are outstanding.
They're both studs. I mean, somebody in Dallas in that front office is very smart.
All right, quickly, Detroit and Buffalo opened up pick. Buffalo immediately getting action here up to 2.5. McCoy, question marks about whether he's going to play for the Bills, but the Bills have been a cover machine with Allen at quarterback, man. They did not cover last time out, and depending on the number you got against Miami Dolphins, they did or did not cover, but they have been much better with Allen at quarterback.
Oh, they're much better. And I like a lot of what I see of Allen. I mean, the Bills are really overachieving this season. It looks like they found a franchise quarterback. Their front office has done a really tremendous job. In 2 years' time, they got him into the playoffs, found a franchise quarterback, cut out all the cancers on that roster. The Bills have a good future.
You're sweating that under.
I'm very nervous about it.
What is it, 6?
I have under 6, yeah. I'm very fortunate the Jets won on Sunday.
That was big.
That was huge.
You cashing.
This total's so low.
I think that line will actually go up to 3.
I was going to say that too. I think Bills close 3.
No one's going to want to bet Detroit. They're going to want to bet on the Bills.
There is 1-2 hanging out there right now. So then now 2.5 everywhere else.
This next game is really interesting.
I say 4.5. That's Chicago, Green Bay.
Really?
People are going to see what Aaron Rodgers did against the Atlanta Falcons. The fact that McCarthy's not there anymore, a renewed confidence in him. The Bears are a very public team. They've been backed almost every single week. But this looks, I think people are going to see Aaron Rodgers, great against the Bears, big number. This goes to about 4.5.
I think the Bears line will actually close 6 or 6.5. Just the Bears are such a public team right now. I mean, I know what you're saying, and I know there's going to be a lot of money line support for Green Bay for sure. There always is when they're a dog. But the Bears are such a public team, and they're coming off of such a great win.
I think the money line will go down, though.
Yeah,
I think this will be a very popular. I think if there's anything you guys get hit on in this game, it'll be Rodgers on the money line. 2-1, right? I could win 100. I could put down 100 to win 2. I could put down 5 to win 1,000. That'll be the most popular way to bet the Packers, I would guess. But I could also see with JVT, I could see people taking 5.5. Yeah. I could see it at 5. I could see it at 5 or 6. Or 6.5. I could see anything here.
Well, we're playing guess the closing lines. Okay.
So you're everywhere, man.
Well, I said earlier, I have no idea where this line is going to go. This is the one I have no idea.
It's a tough one, but the public, I mean, John is right. The public loves to back Rodgers as a dog, for sure.
Yeah, and the track record with Chicago is ridiculous with him against them.
That won't happen again, guys.
But this Chicago team is so much better than Green Bay. I mean, we said that the first week of the year. I remember I did a VSiN show. I was like, I took plus 7.5 on the Bears.
Yeah.
I gave it to Mr. Musburger, and I said, this Bears team is better than Green Bay at every single position on the field other than quarterback.
Washington and Jacksonville, originally 7.5, now 7. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is the least wagered on game on the board, and I will also say 7.
I think the Redskins will get less tickets than any team in the NFL this week. I don't know anyone's going to be running in to bet on the Redskins.
Or lay 7 with Jacksonville.
I'll call it 7.5, but you're right. This is a game that'll be an afterthought on Sunday.
I'll call it 7. Look at this total. This is even lower than Detroit Buffalo. That total's 38.5. Redskins Jags 36.
If Sanchez was in there, I think over would be a good bet. Turnovers.
For sure. Yeah, we watched that against New York. That was completely awful.
Really bad quarterbacks can be good for the over. Turn the ball over.
Nathan Peterman, great for the over.
Jay Peterman, yeah.
Jay Peterman.
Don't forget. Tighten it up, Sam. Come on.
Never forget.
Yeah, Atlanta 7.5 originally, now 8.5 against the Arizona Cardinals. Coming off of a bad loss against the Green Bay Packers. That score was not indicative of how close that or how bad that game was for the Falcons. But Arizona coming off of a terrible performance. Falcons at home. I'm going to go 9.
Oh,
9.5.
really?
I'm going to call it 7.5.
Yeah, I was going to go down. Falcons are the worst cover team in the league this year. 3-10 ATS.
I'm in no rush to back that Cardinals team, but I think it'll go down.
I'm in no rush to bet either of these two.
Atlanta is so bad.
Yep, both of these teams are bad.
Yeah, true.
7.5 or 7.
All right, what are you going to do with Seattle at San Francisco? Seattle, we mentioned at the top of the show, 7-1-1 against the number. Their last 9 games, if anywhere, this is going up towards the touchdown, right? Seahawks now by 5.5.
Yeah, I'll call it 6. Although the Niners, a similar point spread last week, they were like a 5-point dog when they opened at home against Denver. Took some sharp money there, and that money was proved to be pretty good.
2 books just moved this down to 5.
Oh.
Okay.
So 2 books just took some money on the Niners. I'm not saying I agree with it, but 2 shops here in Vegas now have +5.
You know, Seattle's pretty safely into the postseason right now. I mean, they're pretty much set that they're going to be the number 5 seed.
They got motivation. They clinched with this win.
Okay.
So there is motivation there. They can officially lock their spot in if they win against the 49ers. 1-6 out there as well, too, Sam. So we got 5s on the board and a 6. Let's save New England and Pittsburgh real quick. We'll go through Philadelphia and the Los Angeles Rams. It's 9.5. I'm torn here. Philadelphia gets support a lot of the times. I'm going to go. This goes down. I'm going to say 8.5.
I'll guess 10.
8.
I think 10.
I'll go 8.5 too. I'll go with you, Johnny. I mean, we've seen the Rams not cover as a big favorite so many times. It's a must-win for the Eagles. But did the Eagles' season end on Sunday? That's the question.
The Rams could kill this team. They could kill this team.
Yeah, with a deficiency in the secondary, possibly, but we'll see. Yeah. And then Monday Night Football, New Orleans opened up 7, now 6.5 in a majority of shops, but Cam Newton doesn't look healthy. They've been on this huge slide. I got to think this maybe goes, it's not going to move much. I'll say 6.5 or 7. It also depends, as you always say, about what happens during the weekend leading up to Monday night.
If there's a lot of favorites covering on Sunday, this line will go up. I'll call it 7. Carolina is a lost cause, John.
Yeah. New England Patriots, Pittsburgh Steelers gets the closing line. It's a 1-point spread. Patriots favorite on the road.
That's a tough one to guess. I think it'll probably go up towards 3 for the Patriots. Steelers are a mess right now, but the Patriots are coming off of a loss of their own, and they lost because they kicked a field goal on 4th and goal at the 4-yard line. You go for that.
You didn't like them kicking a field goal up 2?
If you score a touchdown, the game is over. If you do not score the touchdown,
the game is over.
You pin them at their own 4-yard line, and you're going to win. Now, obviously, the play was a complete fluke. But still, it was a terrible decision by Belichick, of all people, to kick that field goal and let them off the goal line. That was the only hope they had. They still needed a miracle. But just keep them down there at the goal line. I mean, 50% chance you're probably going to get the touchdown anyway, right? And then you just pin them down inside their own 5 if you don't get it.
I saw the probability when the Patriots had 1st and goal up 2, the probability that they would win was 99.6%.
Wow.
And they lose that game.
Also,
tough one.
Second issue. Rob Gronkowski in coverage. Granted, they were probably thinking Hail Mary, which is why they had him back there.
Yeah.
But there's always a chance that there's a hook and ladder, and he did not look fleet of foot.
He looked like what I feel like we would look like if we were out there trying to chase after Kenya and Drake. I mean, he turned just so slowly. He looked like an old man.
Yes,
what was he doing out there?
Well, I think they were expecting a Hail Mary as opposed to a hook and ladder because they put him out there on Hail Mary coverages, but it didn't look right.
I would have taken my chances with one of the safeties, John.
Yeah.
I have one final question. Let's say this game happens in Arrowhead in the playoffs. What would the line be and what should it be? Chiefs against the Patriots.
Chiefs would be a good-sized favorite in that game, in my opinion. They wouldn't be as much as they should be.
Yeah.
I think that they should be like a touchdown favorite. I think they're that much better than the Patriots. Now, they wouldn't be.
That's a huge number.
I don't think New England's that good this year. No, I'm not saying that they'd be a touchdown favorite, but I think that they should be. I think the Chiefs are much better than them.
But you got to pay the Patriot tax.
Patrick Mahomes is so good. I would really – I mean, the Chiefs – the Chiefs were really the big winners on Sunday. They had the miracle win, and then meanwhile, around them, New England lost, Pittsburgh lost, Houston lost. The Chiefs, they're in the driver's seat right now, and it's going to take a huge effort for anybody to win at Arrowhead Stadium.
He loves Kansas City.
I love Patrick Mahomes.
I'm with you, man. Kansas City is fantastic.
That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, I'm Thomas Viola, and just like Uncle Brent always says, cashing tickets is what it's all about.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
But the other thing is, and you were talking about it before we went on, Raiders plus 550 on the money line. If you want to go ahead and put a little on the side, just aside from taking the points,
right?
That's very, very tempting.
Now, listen, obviously everybody knows I'm a little bit biased, but I have not pushed anybody in that direction all year. No, did I intend to, but I said, wait a minute, that's an inflated number without James Conner. That's one that's going to get corrected as the week moves on. And the Raiders were impressive last week. I have to tell you, the Chiefs, we know, are a Super Bowl contender, but they were good, and they didn't yield until the fourth quarter.
Where they at on the Warriors now? They moved that because they get a lot of Warriors. They're 170 now. The yes/no. Think about that. File that one away. December 4th. Talk to me in May. December 4th. The Warriors are available minus 170 to win the title. Okay. Cousins is coming back. Schedule's getting easy.
Where do you think it goes?
They have
$3.
Oh, they're gonna rip off a long win. They're gonna rip off like it feels like 15-1 coming here.
When you hear about how wonderful these coaches are, they just say it. They win. They don't show what they do on a basketball court that's so wonderful. Do you ever see them diagram a Coach K play or show something terrific he did on defense that changed the game? The answer is no, because that won't happen. He's not a very good coach. He's a good CEO. That's the way someone described me once. And, I think that's like perfect.
I'm not a big fan of handicapping or betting AFC South games. I think it's kind of like a hound's breakfast. Just a bunch of crap thrown into a bowl, and you don't know what you're going to get from one week to the next.
That's right.
Huh?
It's a tough division. Yeah. They play each other very close almost every single time.
And then and then the Titans, the Texans have won 9 in a row. But I mean, we've talked about it over and over how lucky they've been during this 9-game win streak. You have to give them credit for winning the close games.
Yep.
But it's not like the Titans are a dominant team.
Yeah, and
Texan.